Good morning, everyone. Distinguished guests. My name is Barry Stevens. I'm Chair of Active Wales. Welcome to this year's annual conference and AGM. Just a little different this year. I hope it all goes to plan. Housekeeping points. May I ask all attendees to mute themselves if not already done so? Given the time restrictions, we do not have this facility for answering questions, but the answers, however, if attendees need them, feel free to put questions for any of our speakers in the chat facility, including the contact details, and the question is for who the question is for, and after which we will correlate and forward to the appropriate speaker. And Active Wales welcomes approaches from any organisations who support our values and aims and would like to discuss the possibility of working together. Our contact details will be available on screen at the end of the conference. The format for today will be having guest speakers until lunchtime, a video, music, and I think we've got some clips from Fools and Horses during the interval, until we start the second half of our programme with more guest speakers on a range of topics that will be interesting and informative. This will be followed by our AGM, and we're very privileged today to have with us today our First Minister, Mark Drakeford, and our Deputy Minister for Social Care, Julie Morgan. Right Honourable Mark Drakeford. Mark was born and brought up in West Wales before moving to Cardiff more than 30 years ago, and since then he's lived in the Ponticana area of Cardiff. He's a former probation officer, youth justice worker, and Bernardo's project leader in Ely and Caira. He's been a professor of social policy and applied social science at Cardiff University. Mark has also taught previously at Swansea University. And in the 1980s and 90s, Mark was a Labour councillor in South Glamorgan, specialising in education issues, including Welsh medium education. And between 2000 and 2010, he worked as a Cabinet's Health and Social Policy Advisor at the Welsh Government. And he was latterly head of the First Minister's Political Office and has 40 years knowledge of the Cardiff West constituency. Mark became the Assembly member for Cardiff West in May 2011. He was chair of the Assembly's Health and Social Care Committee from July 2011 to March 2013, and of the All Wales Programme Monitoring Committee for European Fund from July 2011 to March 13. He was appointed Minister for Health and Social Services in March 13, and he was appointed Cabinet Secretary for Finance and Local Government in May 2016. Mark was appointed Cabinet Secretary for Finance on the 3rd of November 2017, and on the 12th of December 2018, Mark was appointed First Minister of Wales and became a member of the Privy Council on the 13th of February 2019. Mark was appointed First Minister on the 13th of May 2021. A distinguished career. I'd like to call upon His Right Honourable Mark Drakeford to start us off and give us a little speech. Thank you, Mark.
Barry, diolch yn fawr. Thank you very much indeed for that introduction. Pleser yw I bod trafodaeth I gyd bore yma. It's a great pleasure to have a chance to be with you all today, meeting as we do in the new ways we've learned to talk to one another. Great pleasure to be with my colleague, of course, Julie Morgan, and particular thanks to Baroness Anita Gale for having organised the invitation to be with you. Look, I do think it is a good time to meet. The pandemic is by no means over. Numbers in Wales of people falling ill with coronavirus are far too high, and the risks are by no means, ones that belong only to the past. But through the vaccination programme and through some of the other ways in which we have learned to live with this awful disease, I think we are at the stage where we are able now to regroup a little and begin to look forward, as well as just dealing with the challenges of the day. And when it comes to social care, the theme of today's event, then I want to be positive, I want to be optimistic, but I have to be realistic as well. Because it is just a reality that the experience of the last 18 months will remain with us for a long time yet to come. Although things are better, and we've had a summer where we've been able to meet and to enjoy each other's company more again, for many, many people, for far too many people in Wales, the impact of the coronavirus crisis will have been one of loss and of separation, of family members who are no longer there, or family members who it hasn't been possible to meet and to be with in the way that we would normally have expected and experienced. And for many older people in particular, because we know that older people are more likely to have underlying health conditions, then even if you haven't fallen ill, or even if you haven't been as directly experienced as others, then it has been a period of huge anxiety. Anxiety for some people over very basic things like, how will I get food into the house? How will I collect medicines? And for other people, just fear of the impact that the coronavirus could have directly on their own health. So even though I'm going to be going on in a minute or two, Barry, to talk about the future and the strengths that we have, I don't think for a minute we should do so without recognising that the legacy of that experience will not be over quickly. In terms of people's mental health, their well-being, their confidence of being in the world, it's going to take us all a while to recover. And all of that has put, huge pressure on our social care system. And that's pressure right across the spectrum, whether that's the informal care, which is the vast bulk of social care in Wales, care provided by friends, by relatives, by people just taking an interest in other people that they live with, through the services that are provided to people in their own homes, to people who live their lives in different forms of residential care. The pressure on the system has been enormous, and for many individuals and organisations, those pressures have been hugely challenging. But I do myself genuinely believe that the longer lens of history will conclude that the dominant story of this crisis has been one of huge collective effort and successful collective effort made in the face of such adversity. And you know yourselves the many components of that story. None of them perfect. None of them things that when you look back, you think we could have done better and differently in some aspects of it. But to give you, an example that's often in the news, at the start of the pandemic, the provision of personal protective equipment, PPE, in residential care was entirely the responsibility of the person who ran or managed the care home. They would have been responsible for making sure they had the supplies they needed and being able to put them to use when the need arose. In the last 18 months, 451 million items of PPE have been provided to the social care system in Wales. Just imagine it, 451 million items. And those things, have to be delivered by systems which are inevitably complex. Somebody has to buy them, somebody has to collect them, somebody has to store them, somebody has to work out where they are needed next and take them from the store to that locality. And then when they arrive, somebody has to be able to get hold of them and to put them to use. The complexity of the system is enormous, and yet we've managed it here in Wales. We managed it by the main secret ingredient we have in Wales, and that's our ability to work together. We're a small country. You can often get the people you need to talk to most around the table quite quickly, and then you can pool your knowledge, your expertise, and your effort to try to make a difference. And that's been true, I think, across the whole of the spectrum, whether it's the millions and millions of pounds that have been found to support that effort, whether it's the huge contribution we've seen from volunteers. Every single week in Wales, we have had more and more people come forward to volunteer. And that's been true right through the crisis. Record numbers of people offering their own time and their own expertise to help with this effort. And that's required imagination to make sure that there are good things and useful things for people to do and ways to use their talents, and resilience as well. And resilience, I think, is a quality that comes extraordinarily from people who are represented in the conference today, in the work of Active Wales, and all those other people who you know and who you represent. The resilience to go on doing the things that are needed, even when times are really tough. We think back to December and January earlier this year, dark days, winter days when people aren't able to go out and about, when the impact of the pandemic is absolutely real. And yet, through that sense of collective effort, people manage to go on making that contribution. Let me just say one sentence or two about the vaccination programme in Wales, because the thing that is most different today compared to that time back in December and January is that we now have, in effect, a fully vaccinated population, particularly amongst people above the age of 60. We have remarkable levels of vaccination in Wales, and one of the most successful vaccination programmes anywhere in the world. Now, over the autumn and into the winter, we will mount the booster campaign, starting with those people who had the vaccination first, to make sure that it goes on protecting us all through the months that are to come. I want to say thank you to everybody who is on the call, who have helped us with that effort. Of course, the practical work has been carried out by those hundreds and hundreds of frontline workers in the NHS, in our social care system, the members of the armed forces who came to be part of our vaccination teams here in Wales. But creating a culture in which people have been willing to come forward in such numbers isn't just created by people who do the vaccination. It's created in all the conversations that people have, in all the things that you will have been talking about with other people, helping to inform and sometimes to persuade people who might be a bit hesitant about vaccination to come forward and be part of the collective effort that we've made to protect one another. Because of all of that, because we are in a very different position today, we can, as I said earlier, have a sense that we can now begin to look to the future together. Now, reform of social care has been one of those genuinely wicked social policy issues. You know, an issue that has defeated successive governments. We have, as a result of announcements made in England, the start of a sense about how reform may be carried out there. In my experience, you have to have two underlying preconditions before you can reform any system successfully. You have to have a degree of stability. It's very hard to reform a system that is in, you know, a very fragile and volatile condition, and you have to have strength. You have to have strengths in the system that you can build from and work with. Now, you know, I could not say to you today that the social care system in Wales has the stability that we would like to see it have. It is a system under enormous pressure for all sorts of reasons. And we are working very hard, and Julie will say more to you about this, to try and make sure that we do have a stable system that will help us this winter. So Julie announced £48 million of additional money to help social care services during this coming winter. We're committed as a government to pay the real living wage to all people who work in our social care system during this Senedd term. And Julie and I were in discussions just a couple of days ago with our colleagues in local government in Wales to try and make sure we use the whole system capacity that we have in the health service, in our local authorities, in the voluntary sector, to try to give the system the stability that it needs. And in Wales, we are hugely fortunate to have, I think, a series of real strengths in the social care system, despite the challenges that it faces. The biggest source of strength always, the people who provide the informal care, the people who work in voluntary groups and organisations, our public services, and the commitment that we know we have in Wales still to a sense of public service. You know, when people come in to work a shift in an A&E department in Wales, they are not coming in because of the princely sums of money that they are earning when they do it. What brings them through the door day after day to work in really challenging circumstances is the belief that what they do makes a real difference in the lives of other people. And that sense of public service, you know, you can't bottle it, you certainly can't sell it, but unless you have it, you will be missing what I think is one of the great strengths that we have here in Wales. And we have our shared history. We have the way in which in the whole 20 years of devolution, we have worked together to try to make sure that we created Wales in which people who need social care, whether they are people younger in life who've had catastrophic accidents or illnesses, or whether they are people later on in life, that we regard our people as our asset. People who still have things to give and to contribute, and who play a really, really important part in the life of our nation. Now, to give the Welsh position shape for the future, we are going to call back together again a group of people who we worked with before last May's election, called the Paying for Care group. It's tried to draw on the expertise of people in our universities, in our social services departments, and inside the Welsh Government as well. We will know by the end of October how much money will come to Wales next year to help us with the reform of social care. And that group will now be able to make some practical plans, as I say, to use the strength of the system we currently have to make it fit for a future where we know there will be more people needing care of that sort, and where we have to strengthen the services that we have, the contributions we all can make, and the voice of older people themselves in the way that those services are designed and delivered. I think today's conference is a huge contribution to all of that, making sure that in the discussions that we will be having, we hear loud and clear and directly from people who use those services and whose experiences we need to help us to shape that future. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you all very much for the chance to be here, and I'm going to stay for a little while and look forward to hearing what Julie has to say as the conference proceeds.
You're on mute, Barry.
Sorry about that. Thank you very much, First Minister. That was very good to hear how successful we've been in looking after our people. I myself had my booster jab yesterday, so I'm absolutely delighted with that, and I'm hearing of many more that are going today and tomorrow and this sort of thing. I think we've done a tremendous job, and it's good that it's been recognised that it's everybody involved that's made this so successful. And I'd like to sort of move on now. Again, most grateful that you've been able to allocate some time for us today, but stay as long as you like or dip in and out, absolutely fine. Thank you again. This leads on obviously to our next speaker, which is Julie Morgan, who's Deputy Minister for Social Care. Julie Morgan was born in Cardiff and educated in Dinas Powys Primary School, Howell School and King's College London, University of Manchester and Cardiff University. She worked as a social worker and manager in South and West Glamorgan before becoming an assistant director at Barnardo's. She was a councillor on South Glamorgan County Council until she was elected as an MP for Cardiff North in 1997. During her time in Westminster, Julie presented 3 private members' bills, one on banning smoking in public places, one on granting votes for 16-year-olds, and one on preventing under 18s from using sunbeds, which became law in 2010. Julie was elected as an Assembly member for Cardiff North in 2011 and was a member of the Public Accounts Committee, the Finance Committee and the Environmental Committee during the 4th Assembly. As well as chairing 7 cross-party groups covering areas such as children's cancer, nursing and midwifery, in the 5th Assembly, Julie was a member of the Health and Social Care and Sports Committee and the Children, Young People and Education Committee. On the 13th of December 2018, Julie was appointed Deputy Minister for Health and Social Services, and Julie was appointed Deputy Minister for Social Services on 13th of May 2021. I'd like now to bring in Julie, and I'm sure she's going to add lots of information on top of what the First Minister's outlined earlier. Thank you, Julie.
Diolch Barry, and bore da, and diolch yn fawr am y gwahoddiad I fod yma gyda chi heddiw. Good morning, and thank you very much for inviting me to join you today. I'm really pleased to be here to support Active Wales. And of course, I noticed that the theme of today's conference is changing the narrative surrounding older people. And I want to pledge my support for your campaign and for your strapline, retired from work, not from life. And I think that strapline is very effective. And I think it would be a really good way to engage people in a conversation about ageing. And I hope that our work in the Welsh Government to champion older people, and of course we have got the strategy for an ageing society, which is being launched next week. And I hope that will help to boost, you know, the campaign messages that you've got, because I am aware that the media does often portray older people as, you know, passive recipients of health and social care services. And I think it's only too easy to overlook the many ways that older people support our communities to flourish. And the First Minister has already said in his speech the huge contribution that older people do make to our communities and have particularly made during the pandemic. And I think, you know, we should never forget that so many older people are caring for their partners who may be living with dementia. I mean, I think that is a very common situation, and I've had many people come to see me who are in that position. And then many working adults depend on grandparents for childcare. I do a lot of childcare as a grandparent myself, so I know how important it is for us to recognise the contribution that older people do make to our society. And we want, you know, the sort of Wales where that contribution is recognised and where the discrimination and ageism that we do know exists, that we are able to get rid of it and everyone is valued for their worth, whatever age they may be. And as I say, during the pandemic, it became absolutely clear that many charities would not be able to cope without the support that's been given to older people by older people. And I think we all know when we've got a great deal to thank you all for. So I just wanted to say a bit about our strategy for an ageing society, Age-Friendly Wales. That will be published next week, and it does challenge the stereotypes of older people. And I hope it will encourage people to reconsider the way they think and the way that they feel about ageing. And I think by acknowledging and valuing the contributions of older people in Wales, we can reject ageism and work across the generations to create an age-friendly Wales. But I also think it's very important that people shouldn't be judged just by their economic worth. Everyone has the capacity to make a difference. So our vision is for an age-friendly Wales that supports people of all ages to live and age well. And we're allocating £500,000 between different local authorities, between all the local authorities, to encourage work towards this shared vision. So to be successful as an age-friendly community, the community must reflect the range of factors that influence how we age, such as the places where we work, our rights and entitlements, and our relationships with our families and with our communities and governments. And it also takes into account the relationships we have across the generations, from our health and transport systems to the way we socialise, the way we work and care for others. The strategy aims to unlock the potential of today's older people and tomorrow's ageing society, because we do know, as the First Minister has already said, that more people are living longer, which is a matter of, you know, great happiness. I think that we're all living longer, and it does bring, you know, a great wealth to society that we're bringing longer. We want to, you know, unlock that potential, as well as recognising that our social care system will have more strain on it. So this document was written with older people and with their representatives. It was co-produced, and Active Wales, as you know, you informed its development. You took part in engagement events, you took part in working groups, and of course you're a member of the Ministerial Advisory Group on Ageing. Welsh Government continues to provide funding to older people's organisations, including Active Wales, because we recognise the importance of involving older people in the early planning stages of policy development. And I think that means it makes the most of your knowledge in Active Wales and your skills, so that we can design projects and policies that will make a real difference. And I think that is one of the hallmarks of our Labour government, basically, that we do want to involve people. We want to make sure that the policies we make are informed by people who have lived experience. And so thank you, Active Wales, for all you've done to inform our policy making. Now, John Davis, your previous chair, has been a member of Welsh Government groups for over many years and helped us to understand the key issues that are affecting older people. And I'd really like to thank John for giving his time and his expertise so freely. And then to welcome you, Barry, as the new chair. And I really look forward to working with you to continue to improve the lives for older people across Wales. And I'd also like to thank your secretary, Anne Vincent, I know, who is here, and I know that she's worked very hard to organise this event. Now, throughout the pandemic, I've held regular meetings with the Older People's Commissioner, the Ministerial Advisory Forum on Ageing, and older people's organisations. And I know that not being able to meet face to face has had a huge impact on many people's mental health. And there are concerns that some of your branches may not be able to continue, even with the lifting of restrictions. And I do recognise that having places to meet are vital if local groups are going to restart and thrive. And so we are expecting from the Welsh Government that local authorities should be continuing to reopen day centres as soon as it is possible. And we did write to the local authorities on the 23rd of July to set out our expectations and stipulated the local authorities should be actively engaging and considering people's views when reviewing and reopening services. So we have been in touch with the local authorities because I know that is one of the issues about where you're going to meet if places have not reopened. And to support the COVID-safe operation of day centres, we developed action cards for service users and providers. And we're currently updating these and they should be republished very soon. I've also listened to concerns about the increased use of digital technology to access services such as GP appointments. And I just wanted to reassure you that we are listening and are working to try to find solutions, because I know I have been approached about this in virtually every group that I have attended. And now our digital strategy for Wales was launched in March, and that sets out a clear vision and ambition for a coordinated digital approach in Wales. And the strategy is absolutely clear for people that cannot or decide not to participate digitally. We will continue to apply the principles of user-centred design so that there are alternative ways to access public services in Wales, alternative access routes, which will be as good as those offered online. But I do know that there is a lot more that we can do and that we should do to ensure older people get the support they need to get digitally connected. And I really welcome the work of the Older Persons Commission to identify how we can remove barriers that prevent older people from getting online. So, you know, I just wanted to say that that issue is very much alive in our thinking, and thinking about ways that we can ensure that older people are able to have the advantages of being digitally connected when they can and want to be, but that we do recognise that that doesn't cover absolutely everybody. So thank you very much again for the chance to speak to you this morning. We have this vision of an age-friendly Wales, you know, a place that everybody, whatever their age or background, can feel safe and supported to grow old here in our wonderful country, when there are so many opportunities for us of all ages. And I think that we will have the opportunity to create an age-friendly Wales. And I really look forward to you know, working with you to achieve this. So thank you once again for the work you're doing to you know, to support older people in Wales. And I think it's you're doing a great job. Diolch.
Thank you very much, Julie, and let me thank you for the time you've given us today and the updates. And personally, I know how hard you work and support groups like us, and that's really appreciated. We can take the voice of our people straight to government, and that is so good. And it doesn't happen across the UK in the way it happens in Wales. And personally, I think we're going forward and we're hitting the right agenda, and things are going to improve for our people. And thank you, just real big thanks for everything you do.
Yes, thank you very much.
I'd like to move on now to our next speaker, and this is Laura Page, who's been doing some work which I'll explain in a minute. Laura Page is an artist, photographer, photojournalist, and socially engaged practitioner. Her artwork is a mixture of photography, film, sound, and mixed media, and she often collaborates with others. Much of her work explores people, society, politics, culture, and philosophy. She works as a socially engaged artist practitioner with people of all ages, backgrounds, and abilities, often working with groups that are marginalised or have little access to art, and supporting people to make high quality artwork, which aims at giving people a voice, building confidence, and strengthening communities. She photographs and writes articles and reviews for regional, national, and international newspapers and magazines. Laura has fully qualified in all of the national councils for the training of journalists, national certificate examinations in photojournalism. She also has a BA Honours and a master's degree in physiology. She won the Trevor Roberts Award for the Best Up-and-Coming Photographer at the Midlands Media Awards. Laura has some of her photographic artwork on display at exhibitions around the UK, and Laura's current project, entitled Hidden Depths, will be a series of portraits of people aged over 80, with the aim of capturing the daily lives of a diverse and surprising range of people. The project was recently featured on BBC News, and having been named winner of the 4th annual Rebecca Vassie Memorial Award for her proposal to show extraordinary lives of Britons over the age of 80. I'm going to call upon Laura to explain a little bit more on that. Laura, thank you.
Diolch, Barry. Bore da. Thanks for inviting me today. Can everyone hear me okay?
It's fine.
Yeah, brilliant. So as Barry mentioned, I'm going to talk about my photography project, Hidden Depths. This started when I won the Rebecca Vassie Award for my proposal to photograph older people in a way that shows older age in a bit of a different light than many of the images that we often see in the media, the stereotypes that we see all too often. I got the idea because I do a lot of work with different community groups. I was doing a lot of work with older people and people with dementia, people in retirement villages, and just hearing the kind of rich knowledge and lives and depths that people had that were just also often overlooked when people see an older person and don't look any deeper to see all that kind of knowledge and wisdom that's there. So that kind of inspired me with the project, really. And I think the best way is really if I just show you some of the pictures and tell you some of the stories so far. So I'll just share my screen. Okay, so this is Doc, who's an 87-year-old tattoo artist, and thought to be probably the oldest professional tattoo artist in the world. Amazing spiritual man, loads of wisdom, really kind, and still got a steady stream of people that he tattoos. When he's not busy tattooing, he's making sculptures or sort of meditating and enjoying spending time on his own. He's learned to really love that kind of quiet time on his own as well, even though he's a very sociable person. This is Betsy, who has just become a professional ballet dancer in her 80s. She'd always liked dancing and wanted to be a dancer, but she had to dedicate her earlier life to studying and then work and then bringing up her family. So she didn't have the chance to dance as much as she wanted to. But this means that kind of in older life, now she's got the chance. She said a lot of people that she knows that are professional dancers, their bodies are quite worn out, so they can't dance anymore. But because she's dedicated her earlier life to these other things, her body's still quite strong, and she dances at Saddle as well. She's danced with some world famous dancers. She's really loving it. She said her mum got to see her finally reach her dream to become a professional dancer before she died. So that's made her really happy. And she's kind of gone from the quiet, leafy suburbs of Surrey and recently moved into bustling area in London. She's really enjoying that. So this is Jeff. He was diagnosed with cancer, was not expected to live, and he decided in his early 80s, that he was going to learn to fly a Spitfire after getting this news. Against all expectations, he fought off the cancer, and he's now trying to get in 10 flights before his 90th birthday. He's now 88, I think he's maybe 89 now. He's managed to do victory rolls in it. He organises all kinds of flying events and historical events, and kind of someone who really brings people together. This is Glenys. She's a really amazing artist, lives in Cardiff, and she's just recently had a big retrospective of her work. She's still painting all the time. She's 97 now, and this is her in her beautiful living room. She has a lot of young friends that are people that have been ex-students, and they still come and visit her. She stays in touch with a lot of her old students who she's inspired, and she's had a really interesting life. Her father used to bring back sketchbooks from the colliery where he worked, and she started experimenting and mixing paint, and then went on to go to art school. She really battles on. If she hurt herself, she hurt her foot and she couldn't leave her chair, so she developed a new way to make art during that time, and she just says it's her lifeblood, and not to do it would be hell, so she carries on. And this is Jonathan. He lives in Liverpool, and he's an artist, a poet, a writer. A lot of the pictures that you can see in the background here are his work, and he's currently writing his autobiography. He has cerebral palsy and spent most of his life in a wheelchair, being told a lot by people about the things that he can't do, but he's kind of carried on, defied a lot of expectations. And he was told recently that as his physical health was deteriorating, that he wouldn't be able to paint anymore, but he's carried on. He's just developed a new method to paint, so he paints from his shoulder instead of from his wrists, and has kind of just developed his artwork. It's still really beautiful, but like all great artists, it just keeps changing as he changes. This is Irene. She lives in Sheffield. She fostered 256 children in her lifetime. She was a single mum. Her husband left her with her only child, and she worked a lot of really difficult jobs until she decided that there was a lot of kids that needed fostering. So she would sometimes have 5 children at a time, because she didn't want siblings to be separated. 5 under 5s a lot of the time, and often the kids would be from all different backgrounds. So she had had 3 kids that looked quite different to each other in a pram, which would cause her to be spat at in the street, because people would say, oh, I suppose one of them looks like their father, and things like that. But she carried on. She's got a really wicked sense of humour, and she just loved the kids. And she's got a book with like all the details of all the different kids that she fostered in her lifetime. She had no hot running water, so she used to wash all the kids in one bath and then drag the bath to the back door and then scrub the backyard of it. So she's worked really hard, and I suppose made a big difference to a lot of people's lives. This is Lloyd. He also lives in Sheffield. He came on his own over from Jamaica at the age of 15 and kind of wanted to be off the streets quite early because there was skinhead gangs around and stuff. And at that point, his friend said to him, "Why don't you come down to the boxing gym with me and we'll learn to box and feel a bit safer out on the streets." And he became a really good boxer. He became a professional boxer, and then he had some injuries which stopped him from being able to continue with that. So he, at that point, got into bodybuilding and did that professionally as well, and opened a really famous gym called Lloydie's Gym, which many young people came to and had a focus. He helped them to train and advised them on all kinds of parts of life, as well as just kind of getting physically well. And yeah, when you meet him, just people trying to shake his hands everywhere he goes. A lot of people say he's made a big difference to his life. Am I okay for time, Barry?
You've got about 30 seconds.
All right. In that case, I'll finish up there. I met so many amazing people. I've taken 30 odd pictures and done interviews so far, so it was really hard to choose, but that's just a little taster of a few of the people that I've met who've been really inspired me and kind of really kept me going through lockdown, just to meet brilliant people and learn their stories. Okay, thanks very much.
Well, thank you, Laura. That was really informative, and you produced some lovely work there, and thank you for giving your time today. We've come to a break, a comfort break, which is of 10-minute duration, so we can break off now. I think the host will be putting some music on for us, so we're going into a 10-minute break. Thank you all. Welcome back. At this point, we would have asked Helena Herklots, who's the Older People's Commissioner, to speak about her role. But unfortunately, Helena was unavoidably diverted in another direction. We have with us today the Deputy Older People's Commissioner, and that's Kelly Davis. She's the Chief Operating Officer also. Just a word, I mentioned that the Office of the Older People's Commissioner was established in law to protect and promote the rights of older people. It's been working very successfully. I'd like to come on to Kelly now, who I know very well because I worked with Kelly over a period of 18 months, and I know she does a tremendous job, and I'm really grateful to have her here today on behalf of Helena as well. Okay, over to you, Kelly. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. It's lovely to see you. Good morning, everyone. Bore pawb. I not only have to be the sort of standing act for Helena this morning, but I also have to follow what I very much just enjoyed, which was my favourite musical, Les Miserables and One Day More. So I'm glad I was on mute, because I must admit, I was in my kitchen singing at the top of my voice, thinking, how am I going to follow this? But I will try my best for you all this morning. So I know you weren't expecting me. You were expecting Helena Herklots, the Older People's Commissioner for Wales. But as Barry said, I'm Kelly, I'm the Chief Operating Officer, and I'm the Deputy Commissioner. And I'm here this morning to pass on the sincere apologies of Helena, as she isn't able to be with you all this morning. I'm sure some of you know it can be difficult to get an appointment at the GP. So when you're offered one, you really have to take it. And that's been the experience of your own commissioner today. So Helena was really looking forward to seeing you all. She was telling me how much she'd enjoyed being in Porthcawl 2 years ago and being with you. So very much last minute changes and apologies, but it's very much my pleasure to be with you here today. It's lovely to see so many familiar faces. I'm sure actually we all would have liked in certain circumstances to be at Porthcawl Pavilion. It gives us the excuse to have a lovely ice cream on the front, and we very much would have enjoyed this weather today. But hopefully we'll be able to be back together next year and see each other in person. So today I'm going to just give a very quick overview of our 4 priority areas and some specific areas of work under these. And by focusing on the 4 key priority areas that we've taken an extensive programme of work to ensure that older people are protected as the COVID-19 pandemic continues and are supported and enabled to recover from the pandemic and continue to contribute towards our communities. So our rights priority is protecting and promoting older people's rights. The COVID-19 pandemic has shone a light on many pre-existing inequalities and injustices faced by older people, and has demonstrated how older people's rights may not be as secure as had been assumed. The need to protect and promote older people's rights has become even more important, as we have seen during the pandemic, how easily these rights can be bypassed or ignored. We have an advice and assistance service where we provide assistance to older people direct or their families and loved ones. And our advice and assistance team provide valuable information, support, advice and assistance to those who are usually in desperate need. Family members have contacted us in desperate situations where they've been distraught as they've been unable to deal with difficulties, such as their loved ones not being able to be discharged from hospital and move back home, or those who are not sure what their rights are about visiting loved ones in care homes and hospitals. We will continue to provide information, advice, assistance directly to older people and their loved ones to empower them to understand and exercise their legal rights. And we will continue to intervene if these rights are being ignored or disregarded by public bodies. We will also continue to take action to raise awareness amongst public bodies of older people's existing legal rights, to inform older people about their rights, and to extend and strengthen older people's rights where necessary. Our abuse priority is stopping the abuse of older people. Now, I'm sure many of us have been targeted by scammers, and some of us unfortunately may actually know someone who has been scammed. And we know that criminals are using the current situation to exploit and defraud people, and that older people are often targeted specifically by criminals due to their perceived vulnerability. So by knowing what to look out for, we can protect ourselves and others becoming victims of crime. We know that we can be contacted by phone and email, text, social media, even in person. They'll try to make us part with our money, get us to share information, get us to buy goods or services that don't exist. We also know that the pandemic has been a particularly difficult time for older people living with abuse. This can be domestic abuse, sexual violence, coercive and controlling behaviour. Now, this is not often well understood, and it's often underreported. So that's why we've been working with 30 organisations to ensure that older people can get the support they need to keep them safe and protected from abuse and crime. Helena established an action group of over 30 organisations who work together to ensure that older people can get the support they need to keep them safe and protected from abuse and crime. The group has been raising awareness of the things that older people can do to keep themselves safe and protected, and the role the wider public can play in protecting older people. Alongside this, the group has also been promoting the services and support available that can help older people, as well as encouraging people to report any concerns they may have about an older person's safety or well-being. So to support this area of work, the group produced an information pack. This provides useful information and resources about how older people can stay safe and protect themselves from abuse, scams and crime. If you go on our website, you can download this information, or if you contact us, we can make sure that we send you hard copies if you would like to distribute this to your family and friends and other organisations that you work with. Our ageism priority is ending ageism and age discrimination. I'm sure you know that ageism underpins many of the issues currently faced by older people and results in negative stereotypes and their rights not being respected and upheld. Ageism can also negatively influence the decisions made by society, meaning that the services, facilities and opportunities that people need to help them to age well can be inadequate and discriminate against older people. A growing body of research indicates that ageism has a wide range of negative impacts upon older people. It can affect their physical and mental health, memory function, recovery from illness, levels of social exclusion, and even life expectancy. So tackling ageism and age discrimination is therefore essential to support older people's health and well-being and ensure that they have equality, are treated with dignity and respect, and that the contribution they make to society is both recognised and celebrated. This is an area that your strapline sums up perfectly, so retired from work, not from life. And this is a really important message to get across. As the First Minister and Deputy Minister has already detailed in their speeches, we know that older people are contributing significantly to society and their communities in many different ways, such as volunteering and caring. Older age is a positive experience for many, and it is important that this is recognised and celebrated. But some of the ways in which the press and media report things are very negative. Negative portrayals of older people in the news media play a role in reinforcing stereotypes and assumptions about older people and growing older that lead to ageism and age discrimination. The media plays an important role in raising awareness of a wide range of issues, including the issues faced by older people, and influencing opinion and public attitudes, such as attitudes towards older people. So older people have often shared concerns with the Commissioner about the way that they are represented in the media. Many older people have told the Commissioner that the way that ageing is often presented does not reflect their experiences or even those of their peers, and that the media often does not reflect the diversity of older people in Wales today. So one of our areas of work is working with organisations like the National Union of Journalists and the Independent Press Standards Organisation to try and get better reporting. So if you see any news articles where you are not happy of how older people are portrayed, such as the language used and the imagery used, then please let us know. We can add this to our body of evidence to pick up further with the NUJ and IPSO. Our Ageing Well priority is enabling everyone to age well. So ageing well, adding life to years, not just years to life, is important for each of us and for our country as a whole. It is something that everyone in Wales should be able to do. Older people should be seen as a vital part of society and should be able to have more opportunities to participate in and contribute to our economy and our communities. Particularly now, in the most extraordinary of times, how can we make sure that older people are not left behind? From a practical point, we've been working to make sure that when you go out and you get your booster vaccination or your flu vaccination, then you should be getting a leaflet with key information about staying well and where to go for help and support if needed. We're also pressing for more support through local and voluntary and community organisations. So given the particular ways that the pandemic has affected older people and the community resources and services that are often a lifeline to them, there will be a need to be a significant focus on enabling people to age well and on making our communities more age-friendly, which will be crucial to build confidence amongst older people to re-engage with society and to support reablement and rehabilitation. This was a key message shared by the Deputy Minister earlier today. We've continued to work with local authorities throughout Wales to encourage and support them to join the World Health Organisation's global network of age-friendly cities and communities. This provides recognition and support for age-friendly initiatives, as well as opportunities for mutual learning between cities and communities worldwide. The response to the pandemic in Wales, particularly at a local level, has shown that there are some strong foundations to build upon. We must now ensure that the policies and changes made as we move towards recovery will result in practical improvements in older people's lives. We all know that the past 18 months have been so challenging, and the pandemic has had such a significant impact on older people throughout Wales. I hope that this whistle-stop tour has given a flavour of what we have been doing to continue to support and empower older people throughout Wales to exercise their rights, and how we have taken action when necessary to work constructively with organisations to ensure that older people's voices are considered when key decisions have been made that affect their lives. And we as an organisation look forward to continuing to build a Wales where older people are valued, rights are upheld, and no one is left behind. Thank you ever so much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Diolch yn fawr iawn, pawb.
Thank you very much, Kelly. And I know firsthand the wonderful work that the office does and all the staff there. And I really appreciate your time today coming along. And again, thank you. And I'll see you at our next meeting, I think. Okay.
Absolutely. Thanks Barry. Many thanks.
Lovely. Now I'd like to come on to lady, Age Cymru Chief Executive, Victoria Lloyd. Victoria's background is in policy and campaigning. She joined Help the Ages policy team in 2006, and she was appointed Director of Policy and Programmes of Age Cymru. When the charity formed in 2009, she became Chief Executive in 2018 and leads on the strategic direction of the charity in ensuring it improves the lives of older people in Wales. Victoria is currently Chair of Age Alliance Wales and the Ministerial Advisory Forum on Ageing, and a representative on the Third Sector Partnership Council. Victoria, over to you. I'd like to hear from you.
Thanks, Barry, and thank you for the invitation to speak this morning. It's really lovely to be with you. As Kelly said, it would have been great to be in Porthcawl, given the sunshine, but it's lovely to be with you online anyway. And a real privilege to be asked to contribute to your agenda this morning. I've been reflecting on your conference titles and the themes, particularly in the context of changing the narrative surrounding older people. And I wanted to start off by exploring that narrative, some of the issues, and what we can do here, building a little bit on what Kelly has just said, and potentially thinking about what we can do together. Ageism is widespread, it's deeply ingrained and more socially accepted than other forms of prejudice or bias. It's often seen as benign, humorous, or at the very least harmless. And people don't often realise that the way we see age and ageing, whether it's talking about having a senior moment or reading in the press about the challenge of an ageing population, or at the other end of the spectrum, perhaps young people today thinking they know everything. The way we discuss ageing can perpetuate myths and misconception. And it also influences the policies we develop and the opportunities that we create or we don't create in our communities. Words such as elderly, old or senior might bring to mind stereotypes of older people as frail and dependent, and they're frequently used negatively. And similarly, the word juvenile might bring to mind an equivalent stereotype of a younger person. A recent World Health Organization report on ageism explains how it can change the way we view ourselves, can pit one generation against another, and can devalue or limit our ability to benefit from what younger and older populations can contribute, and can reduce opportunities for health, longevity and well-being, while having far-reaching economic consequences. And we started a piece of work last year called This is Older, considering representation of older people in the media. And it sits alongside the work that Kelly has just described, that the Older People's Commissioner has just been doing. The representations we currently see in the media often fall into the extremes, and they can reinforce the stereotypes. So, for example, in newspapers or news programmes, they'll often use the image of disembodied wrinkly hands on a walking stick to depict older people. Or at the other end of the spectrum, they'll show us the extraordinary individual that can achieve, what might be out of reach for lots of us. When in reality, as over 50s, they include the range and the variety of characteristics. So that's people that might be active or less mobile, might be incredibly sociable, or might be isolated or introverted, glamorous and out there, or happy to blend in, happy, sad, or the full range of emotion in between. They show people being well off, or living in poverty, independent or dependent. Older people fall into all of those groups. And at Age Cymru, we think in depicting and representing older people, organisations need to consider the fact we're all ageing. It's happening to all of us. It's not some far off destination. And we think that will help to reduce the othering of older people. we need to recognise that older people aren't a homogenous group and are as diverse in their lives and lifestyles as any other age group. And we're launching an agenda next month outlining this. In recent years, there have been quite a lot of media narratives that seem to seek to compound the stereotypes that set generations against each other around many of the topical political issues. And this was also the case during the pandemic. I've been looking at some studies over the pandemic. One found that although older people carried a significant proportion of the burden, they were mostly left out of the pandemic response. And it was suggested that this was partly due to ageism or discrimination of older people. And that's been prevalent in research, policy and the media. And we know the pandemic and the way it was in the UK media impacted on older people. Caused huge anxiety, particularly at the beginning, about how people get food, how they get prescription, how they could access the cash to pay for those things. And during March 2020, we were speaking to 1,000 people a week through our advice line as people were looking to find, help and support to get through it. Concerns were raised with us about the development of advice on treatment decisions for older people, whether they'd give undue weight to age over other characteristics. We saw some examples of seemingly blanket decisions being made about care and treatment options available to older people who felt pressurised perhaps into agreeing to do not attempt CPR instructions. And this all compounds the stereotype of older people as frail and vulnerable. And there's been a real worry that the pandemic would ingrain that stereotype. And it can be a self-fulfilling prophecy for some who might start to view themselves as vulnerable when they might not have done before. And it's not just a Wales or a UK issue. It impacts across the world to various degrees. There's a recent study of newspaper headlines during the pandemic, and they found that over 71% represented older people unfavourably as a homogenous group associated with death, with deficiencies in residential care, or with extreme vulnerability. And there was an analysis of 18,000 tweets that were posted in March 2020 that had the words elderly, older, or that dreadful term boomer with the hashtags for COVID-19 and coronavirus. And most of those contained personal opinions, personal accounts and jokes, but a quarter of the tweets that were analysed had ageist or potentially offensive content about older people in them. And another found that the media coverage of COVID-19 has exposed and given voice to the contradictory forms that ageism can take, from pity to resentment. And that study concludes that with more people now over 50 than at any other time in our history, it's time to confront ageism, to review public discourse and how that's been reinforcing the bias, and consider how it can be challenged. So I think there's a need to promote inclusivity in the media and the social media, and the Older People's Commissioner's Office has been doing great work there, because we need to make sure the voices of older people are heard. We need to think about how we increase the participation of older people to boost engagement in social interaction. And it's a good way of providing and receiving social support. And we need to encourage organisations to think about how they debunk myths in online discourse. So combating ageism needs a concerted effort from all of us to ensure we provide positive messages associated with ageing, and to create an environment of respect, empathy and solidarity. So your focus on changing the narrative is vital and it's timely. As I say, we know the OPC has done some great work with their team in the area in highlighting and challenging everyday ageism. And it's going to be a key part of the strategy for an ageing society. So it's something we can all support. But, on a positive, I think we are starting to see some change. I was really pleased to see a different perspective this month on climate change. There was a report published showing the evidence that suggests the gaps between generations on environmental concerns are often massively overstated. So it's true that younger generations are more likely to say that climate change is very or extremely dangerous, but actually it's also true there's not much difference in terms of what the generations say. Older people are far from unconcerned about this, yet it's been used as a hugely divisive and damaging myth that's been repeated ad infinitum for a number of years now. So it's really good to see that starting to change and be exposed. Because while there might be differences between generations on different issues, understanding is important, and so is not allowing those ageist myths against the old or the young to flourish. And together we can actually work and commit to challenging those myths. On Friday at the National Library of Wales in Aberystwyth, we're launching an exhibition celebrating the diversity of older people in Wales with a series of specially commissioned images as part of our This Is Older project. They're images and stories, and they're going to be available digitally for those who want to use realistic images of older people in Wales. And it clearly complements the work that Laura described earlier that she's been doing. And it's exciting to see so much going on in this space at the moment. Before I finish, if I could just return to the pandemic for a couple of moments. Over the last couple of years, it's been a real privilege to work with Active Wales and the other older people's organisations, really to understand what matters to people, particularly in terms of the lockdowns, which has meant such a change in the day-to-day lives of so many of us. The work that we've done together on our surveys has really helped shape thinking at Age Cymru. They've shown us some of the struggles people have been enduring, and they've shown us how to map some of the pathways needed as we emerge from the pandemic. People told us not seeing friends and families, the impact on emotional health of loneliness and worries over physical health were major challenges during lockdown, and it was good to hear those reflected by the First Minister earlier on. One older lady told us she was fed up of being lonely, but the going out would be one of the things she found most challenging. Older people told us how they're keen to see safe reopening of facilities, lunch clubs, community spaces where you can get together, have social activity, arts, craft, physical activity. And while we know this has started to happen, we know things aren't back to normal everywhere. We know people remain quite cautious about being with others and the sorts of things that they're willing to do at the moment and how comfortable they are with some activities. One of the people in our survey told us they weren't looking forward to anything. They were living a housebound life as a result of disability. During the lockdown, they'd eventually secured regular food and prescription deliveries, and they were concerned that when life returns to normal, they'd struggle as service providers stop attending to their need and attention turns away from that sort of issue. It underlines for me that people are different and have different needs coming out of the pandemic, as we all did under lockdown. And the work we've been doing together and keeping in touch with people by telephone, people who might live alone or might have been isolated by lockdown, really helped us to sharpen our focus on what does matter to people. The importance of connection, the importance of a friendly voice at the end of the phone or over a Zoom, and the importance of activity in local communities was underlined by how much people missed things like their Tai Chi class or their Nordic walking group. And the sense of community these sorts of things engender was underlined by the work of our wonderful army of volunteers who stayed in touch right the way through the lockdowns by phone, by text, by WhatsApp. And it underlines the importance of groups like Active Wales in bringing people together. And we look forward to continuing to work with you in the future, to continue to pool our intelligence and make sure that we're all here for older people. So thank you very much.
Victoria, thank you. Thank you for your time today, and that was most informative. And I can concur, the work you do is absolutely tremendous. Thank you again. Okay. Right, if I can move on to our next speaker, please. This is Rodri Thomas. He represents a Community Pharmacy Wales group who, excuse me, Rodri has been a pharmacist with over 20 years experience in the community sector. He now works for Community Pharmacy Wales, supporting pharmacists across the country to deliver new services. Community Pharmacy Wales has been extremely supportive of Active Wales over many years and supporting our conferences. And we very much appreciate what they put in over the years. Are you there, Rodri?
Hi, yes, I am.
Good, thank you. Over to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Barry. Well, first off, thank you very much for inviting us again to speak at the conference. And I'd just like to start with, in reference to the title of the conference this year, and to help your members support Live Life to the fullest. And in reality, over the last 18 months, what we have seen in community pharmacy is accessibility and availability and supporting your members with accessing their medication. And just to give you an idea, last year in Wales, 81.1 million prescriptions were dispensed in community pharmacies. And to give you an idea, that's exactly the same number as was dispensed in 2018-19. So in reality, we continue to work as normal, delivering pharmacy services to patients right across the country, but in a very different way, because what we saw was an over 400% increase in the number of deliveries we were making to patients in that period of time as well, which has started to return to normal. But of course, a lot of those patients are still needing those deliveries, and we are continuing to support them to live life as they see fit. It's been a challenging 18 months, but as we emerge from this pandemic, it's important that patients are able to access the services that they still need to access. And this season, in this flu season, what we are seeing is, following the pandemic, a greater understanding of why patients require vaccinations. Because in previous years, we were told you must get your flu jab every year. And there was a lot of confusion as to, why do I have to get it every year? And of course, vaccination rates weren't quite where they needed to be. But following the last 18 months, people's understanding of why they need vaccinations is far greater. And what we're seeing is far more patients coming forward asking for their flu jabs. And you can do this through your community pharmacy as well as your GP practice. But a lot of patients are coming in and asking, oh, have you got your flu jabs? I need it as soon as possible. The truth is, there are plenty of flu jabs across the season. They might not be available in week 1, but across the season, you will be able to access a flu jab if you need it. So what we ask is that you check availability at your local pharmacy, book ahead if needed, and in reality, you will get your vaccination in good time. Moving forward then, we have other services that are important to support primary care moving forward. One of those is called the Common Ailment Service. This is a service where you can access several conditions. Now, if I can share my screen, I will do that. And this is the Common Ailment Service is something that you should access your pharmacy first for a number of conditions. And people are asking, well, I'm not sure, I might need to see the GP for this. Well, in reality, we are fully aware of, if you are needed, we can supply for this condition. And if we're not sure, we can refer you into the general practitioner. Certainly with things like eye problems, you should be checking with your optometrist first, because they are more than capable of treating many of the common eye conditions that are presented in primary care. So an example of the conditions that you should be accessing community pharmacy first for are athlete's foot, acute backache. So if you haven't had symptoms of backache before and you're just coming with the first signs of a twinge, you can access us first. Not saying many elderly people have chicken pox, but cold sores, conjunctivitis, constipation, diarrhea, dry eyes, hay fever in season, first signs of indigestion. For example, if you're just suffering heartburn rarely and it comes on, you can access that through community pharmacy. So there's several conditions that you can do that for. So in reality, this is designed to help take pressures away from general practitioners and see more conveniently in the community. Another service that can be provided through community pharmacy is something called the emergency medicine service. So, for example, if a patient runs out of medication on a weekend and they've forgotten to order it, you can actually go to your local pharmacy if they're open and access a small supply of your regular medication free of charge. So, for example, over the recent bank holiday weekend in August, in an Iron Bevan Health Board, 106 patients accessed an emergency medicine from their local community pharmacy. And on asking, 57% of those would have gone to A&E to get medication if they hadn't been able to access it from their pharmacy. So it takes a lot of pressure away from places that really need to see a higher priority patient. So you can come to your pharmacy if you've run out and you can't access a prescription from your doctor, and get a small supply from your pharmacy until it tides you over. The next service is something called the Discharge Medicines Review Service. So again, if we go to if you're discharged from hospital, what they found is that up to 20% of patients readmitted to hospital do so because they've been taking a medication incorrectly or taking an old medication that they had at home that should have been stopped. So if you are discharged from hospital, there's a service available in your local pharmacy that can help you go through your new medication, ensuring you're taking all the correct new medication and remove any old ones that should have been stopped. And this can help cut down on a lot of unnecessary readmissions due to confusion or lack of understanding of why your new medication has changed. So it's just a brief one, but there are a couple of things I'll pick up on just for patients to understand in reality. As I said, deliveries, we've been doing an awful lot of deliveries across Wales. And one thing that's important is that as we return to normal, a lot of support we've had in community pharmacy from volunteer deliverers and things like that is starting to come to an end. Now, pharmacies are still continuing to deliver, but it's important that if you are able to collect your medication comfortably of your own accord, you can do so, which allows deliveries to go to patients who are housebound, who are unable to collect. So we're trying to get that message out that the deliveries increased exponentially over the pandemic. It's important that they return to somewhat of a level of normality so we can focus those deliveries on the patients that need them most. There are also remote consultations, so you can phone the pharmacy. You don't actually have to go in person to the pharmacy. It can be done over the phone, which makes it far easier for a lot of patients to access these services. And finally, as we come into the winter, time pressures. Demands on primary care services are increasing, and all we ask is that perhaps if you had a 24 or a 48-hour turnaround, those turnaround times may increase slightly, and be understanding of that, but you will still get things in a timely manner. It just might, you might need to build in an additional time period before ordering your medication to ensure you receive them. Okay, and just thank you very much for inviting me again.
Rodri, thank you very much for your time today, and that was very informative. I'm sure a lot of people will benefit from listening to what you have to say. And again, thank you for the support you give us, and no doubt you give other organisations as well. Thank you.
No problem, thanks. Right.
I'd like to move on now to a gentleman called Craig Chapman. He's the head of the Partnership and Engagement under the title Re-Engage. Re-Engage exists to provide social connections for older people at a time in their lives when their social circles are diminishing. Our charitable objectives are to encourage older people who live alone to develop social interest by bringing companionship into their lives, and to help older people to establish contact with their peers, and to encourage younger people to devote some of their time to helping older people and find companionship and new friendship groups. Craig is responsible for overseeing the development of the UK-wide partnerships and engagement activities, working alongside various stakeholders. He will collaborate to develop, maintain and sustain referrals of older people into Re-Engage. And Craig is also the regional contact for services in the north of England. Over to you, Craig. See what you have to say.
Hi Barry, I'm not Craig. I'm Gavin. So I'm
oh, Gavin. Sorry, I had a Craig.
Craig. No, we had a last minute change. So
okay.
Apologies for that.
What's your surname? What's your surname, Gavin? Stewart.
Gavin Stewart.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you again.
No problem. I'll just share my screen. So hopefully you guys can see this. I'll just start that from the beginning. So my name's Gavin. I work for Re-Engage on the Activity Groups project, which I'll go on to a couple of slides down. So I'm filling in for Craig, who's the head of engagement for Re-Engage. And then I'm the project manager for Wales. and we work on an activities group project. So for those who don't know who Re-engage are, sorry, I'm just going to move this about so I can see what I'm talking about. So Re-engage is a charity that used to be called Contact the Elderly. So we had a name change probably about 18 months ago or so. But we're in place to alleviate loneliness for older people across the UK with a specific focus on people over the age of 75. So our vision is a world where no one is ever too old to make friends or enjoy social interaction. And our mission is to work within communities to end social isolation and loneliness in older people. So Re-engage, we launched in 1965, and we exist to provide social connections for older people at a time when their social circles are diminishing. So as a result of the pandemic, a lot of our services, or the main part of Re-engage, had to be put on hold. So we actually created our Call Companion service, which was something that was in the pipeline prior to the pandemic. But we launched this then in May, a little bit sooner than anticipated. But we've traditionally done our tea parties, which some of you might have heard about. And then also we've linked with the Community Christmas charity to provide support to older people across the UK if they spend time alone at Christmas. And we're also diversifying, which is one of the reasons why Craig isn't here today. He's actually interviewing for the LGBTQ+, I think, support officer role at Re-engage. But then also we do a lot of partnerships, especially with the activity groups in Wales. And we're actually partnering with Age Alive in Newport to provide exercise groups. So I will go on to that a little bit later. But our strategic goals are to reduce loneliness, empower staff and volunteers, amplify the voices of older people, challenge ageism, and harness technology, which we've all been doing in the past 18 months to 2 years. And something we've specifically been doing on the Activities in Wales group project. So why are Re-engage needed? So there are over 2.2 million people over the age of 75 who live alone, and over the past year have become increasingly vulnerable to loneliness. We've 500,000 people, older people, regularly go up to 6 days a week without speaking to anyone, which is why the likes of our Call Companion service is vital, along with other sort of over-the-phone befriending services across the UK. And also lonely people have a 64% increased chance of developing clinical dementia and suffering from heart disease and depression. So our impact in 2020, I know these numbers are changing a little bit, and they're ever changing. So over almost 8,000 older people were supported by telephone contact. We have around 15,000 plus volunteers over our services, and we have over 1,000 new beneficiaries that have joined Re-engage for the first time in the last year. So 94% of our older beneficiaries say that Re-engage services give them something to look forward to. And 92% of our older beneficiaries say that being part of Re-engage has a positive or significantly positive impact on their lives. And 88% of our older beneficiaries taking part in Call Companions say the calls make them feel happier. So people are linked to other volunteers based anywhere in the UK, and they have between half an hour to an hour chat every week to help reduce loneliness, and which was, I suppose, especially prevalent during the pandemic. So the activity groups, which is my project. So there's myself, I'm the project manager. Then we've got Bethan, one of our support officers in South Wales. So she manages groups in the south. And then we've recently brought on someone in the north of Wales, based in Dolgellau, where she helps manage or will set up groups for people over the age of 75. So our groups are in place, again, to help reduce loneliness, but then increase physical activities to increase activity levels in that age group. So we host a range of social groups with an element of either physical activity and or exercise, such as Tai Chi, chair yoga, exercise classes, bocce, dance. We've even got bowls group. We've got, I suppose another one is curling. If it's a physical activity, we do that. So We start off with a physical activity. We run these groups every 2 weeks or every month, and they're completely free to attend. So we started groups in July, and we currently host groups in Cardiff and the Vale, Newport, Swansea, Llanelli, Carmarthenshire, Anglesey and Denbighshire. So we also have a Welsh language group, and we also have a group in Newport that supports, that works with BAME individuals as well. So this is just some of the photos of our group. So we started in June and July, and we ensure that all of our groups are COVID safe. And we do a range of different activities which are really fun, and every other week I get out there and go to these groups because they are a load of fun. So during the pandemic, we launched online groups via Zoom, which we linked with Digital Communities Wales and AbilityNet, who really helped us as a charity launch our online groups. So we have 110 activity guests attend our online groups, and they run every week. And again, they are completely free, and we offer support for people to get onto our online groups. And since we launched our in-person groups, we've had 90 activity guests attend our in-person groups, which is great. And our groups are free to attend, and we offer free teas, coffees, and some light refreshments at our groups. So our groups are run by volunteers, and we bring in also paid instructors, and we use community venues to help run our groups. And we're also recruiting volunteer drivers in October to help remove the barrier of transport that some older people might face in getting to our groups. So you can register your interest. So we've had around 750 people who have registered their interests with our groups, which helps us gather interest in where we can run our groups across Wales, but then also gives the opportunity for activity guests or older people to tell us what sort of activities they might like in their area. So our groups one of two ways, is either we set up a group, or a volunteer can approach us to utilise our budget to, I suppose, set up a group in their area. So you can register your interest by visiting our website, which I can share this presentation after, or you can call us on 02922 801 802, and we can go through the form with people over the phone. We also do a lot of our groups, they're partnerships groups, so we've linked with the likes of Age Alive, we've got the Dragons Rugby Club in South Wales, Home Instead, and we've also linked with Menter Caerdydd to produce a Welsh language group. So we're always looking for partnerships so we can run these groups on a more regular basis. So yeah, so far we've hosted around 30 groups since July. So you can see these groups are hugely popular, and we intend to run this project for another 2 years. We've got funding from the Welsh Government for 2 years. So I'm going to stop my screen there. I think I'm on time, so thank you very much for that, Barry. Appreciate it. You're on mute, Barry.
You're on mute.
My apologies. Thank you, Gavin. Thank you for your time today. That was really interesting to listen to, and those connections to various the activities is going to be very useful to a lot of people. Thank you again. I'd like to move on now, if I may, to Anne Vincent. Anne is our General Secretary to Active Wales. Anne was born and brought up in Staffordshire, moved to South Wales in 1998 after she married John. She had a career in finance and management, working for blue chip companies such as Royal Bank of Scotland, Legal & General, and the mobile phone company EE. In 2014, she decided to retrain and became an undergraduate at the University of South Wales, and in 2018, graduated with an honours degree in psychology and counselling. She's passionate about addressing social injustice in society, and suspect that retired and older people are becoming more severely disadvantaged than most. She's a trustee of the Sterling Group, member of the organisation Obesity Empowerment Network, and a member of the Association for the Study of Obesity. She's a published academic co-author on a peer-reviewed national study on the attitude and opinions of people living with obesity and healthcare professionals in the UK. And she's currently co-authoring 2 other academic papers in relation to aspects of obesity in her spare time. I didn't realise she had any. I enjoy research. She enjoys researching, caravanning, shopping and dog ownership. She's got 5 dogs and she's fostering for a local animal rescue centre. Now, Anne today is going to introduce changing the narrative. Over to you, Anne. Thank you. Over to you, Anne.
Thank you, Barry. I'm just going to try and share my screen now. And I'm having difficulties, as I suspected I might. So if I can ask the host to step in, please, and share my slides. Thank you so much. Okay, so before I start, I'd like to say that in addition to what Barry's just told you about me, I'm also, oops, there we go, off it goes. Can you take it back one for me? Thank you. I'd just like to say I'm also Vice Chair of the Welsh Senate of Older People, and I'd like to say a very big welcome to our Chair, who's also attending today, Linda Wallace. Hello, Linda, nice to see you. Okay, so without further ado, changing the narrative. As you've heard from various speakers today, this is something that a lot of us consider to be the prime driver for changing the way that older people are perceived. Ageism is rife. It has been forever, but the feeling is that it's tended to get worse in recent years, with the idea that a lot of people, particularly younger people, feel that older people are a burden. That's the current narrative that surrounds older people. So if I can ask you to change the slide for me. So what is a narrative? A narrative is a story, and stories are happening every day, all the time, around every one of us. They help us to understand the world that we live in, and we see it in politics, we see it in the news, from conversations we have with our families and friends, and in society in general. So, as I'm sure you can see, the narrative or a narrative is going on all the while, and it's almost a living thing. Next slide, please. So the current narrative, as I've said, it's not good, it's not nice. And what I'd like to do is show you a video that was created by the organisation Aging Better. And it's about what older people, sorry, it's not what older people think. I'm distracted by the fact that the slides are winging about the place. It's about individuals who were asked what words they associated with older people. So if I can ask the host to click on the button, the video should play. It's not working. Okay, that's really great. I'm not sure whether I can, but if I can pull it up, I will, because it's pivotal to this conversation. Could I ask you to revert the screen to me, host, please? Can anybody see my screen now?
No.
No,
Not at the moment.
Oh dear. I'm just going to try one more thing, and then if that doesn't work,
Okay.
I think I'm just going to have to talk you through it myself.
Anne, when you share your screen, there's a button that says, whoever's sharing the screen, there's a button at the bottom that says click share sound. So it might be that they haven't shared the sound.
Okay. Have a look. Ah. No, we don't appear to be getting anywhere with it, so I'm going to try and talk you through it. Okay, this video. It hopefully will play. The whole conference has been recorded, and we will put it on our YouTube page as and when we've got hold of it and we can move it forward. So where we are with this video is, as I say, it asks various various people what words they associated, and the words that were coming out were things like grumpy, walking stick, medication, all kinds of things that don't show older people in a positive light. They don't sort of act, apart from the last individual who says inspirational. So that was really all that we were sort of about there. But it was sort of like primary to setting the scene for what you could expect the current narrative to look like. If you can share my slides again, please. Okay, so next slide, please. So this is going to be a bit sort of choppy as well, because what I was hoping to do is show a page on top of the one that you see at the moment. So this slide is all about why we've got to change that narrative. And I think the narrative itself was explained well by many of the speakers today, and particularly well by Age Cymru. Some of the things that I wanted to add to that was there's also sort of a lot of hype, and it's negative hype that comes from the media. And when we hear about some of these things, it's not necessarily older people or younger people that say all of these negative comments that are coming out. It's usually the media. So some of the additional things that we hear in the current narrative are that older people are living longer, which means they are actually collecting benefits longer. So they're taking more money out of the system because they are taking pensions for longer. They're blocking hospital beds because there's nowhere for them in care homes. So other people who have illnesses that need hospitalisation can't get a hospital bed because they've been blocked by older people. That they're taking up the biggest proportion of the care budget because they need support that other people don't need, that they are a burden on society. As I said, it's normally put down to other people, not older people, but younger people across the spectrum. But I suspect it's more down to media. This is stigma. This is prejudice and discrimination. It's the kind of things that we as a society dislike, that we don't accept. And there's a recent report that's come out by Aging Better, with collaboration with other organisations, which actually asks people how they feel about all of these topics. And the overwhelming thing is that most people understand that older people are discriminated against. Most people, including younger people, don't feel that older people are undergoing these triggers that the media put out to us. They also understand that a lot of these prejudices and these comments about older people become assimilated by older people, and they internalize them. And the end result of that is a lot of older people have come to believe what society says about them and how they think about them, which in turn, as you've heard earlier on, affects their health, their mental health, their physical well-being, and their psychological well-being. So we're almost caught in a trap by this current narrative, which is almost that vicious circle whereby we hear it, we believe it, we become it. Next slide, please. Okay, that you've just seen flash in front of you was the other slide that I wanted to bring in over the top. Yeah, there we are. To explain this better, this example is a Telegraph journalist who in the midst of the pandemic wrote that it might be beneficial. The COVID virus, the pandemic might be beneficial to the UK economy by killing off elderly Britons. Basically, he was comparing the fact that the Spanish flu pandemic in the early 1900s, which killed off many, many people, it affected more younger people than older people, and it stabilized what was a failing economy at the time. And he's sort of saying that this coronavirus could be beneficial by killing off the elderly in society and stabilizing the economy. How shocking is that? Next slide, please. Okay, to actually get this change of the narrative out there in society, to move away from how we are perceived and how we end up perceiving ourselves, is going to take a bit of a paradigm shift, I believe. This saying, "it takes a village to raise a child," was coined successfully by Hillary Clinton during her election campaigns. And it basically says that to actually achieve something, it takes everybody. It doesn't take just one person. One person can't do it alone. So to change the perception of people, we need to change the words that describe retired and older people. I hear so many older people refer to themselves as pensioners, as elderly, as oldies. I hear other people refer to us as wrinklies. We need to change that. And in this report that I mentioned earlier on, there's been a piece of work done around what older people would prefer to be called. And a couple of them, of the comments, were mature people or seniors. And seniors is a word that's used in America for older people quite a lot. So I think we need to be mindful of what we call older people. We need to support the right to a life of freedom of choice and independence, like the people that Laura has shown us so beautifully today. If people want to do a certain thing, we should support it regardless of what other people try to influence older people to do. We need to listen and actually hear what older people are saying to us. And we need to put a duty of obligation on the decision makers to hear what older people are saying. We need to stop the stereotyping of older people. Had you been able to see the video earlier on and listen to what some people associated in terms of older people, that would be sort of more relevant to what we're saying now. But the context was set earlier on by Vicky when she's talking about how stereotyping works against our well-being because we do internalize those messages. We also need to stop the intergenerational myth. There's this myth going around that younger people dislike older people. And as I said, for all those reasons that the media put out there, that we are a burden, that we do block hospital beds, that we do spend all the money that's in the social care budget. It's a myth. Younger people don't think that way. It's the media that portray that younger people think that way. And it's only by doing all of this that we're going to create a fully equal society. Next slide, please. This needs to be done by co-production. As I said, it takes more than one person to be able to change something this big. So it's all organisations supporting older people working together. It's strengthening the groups of older people by helping recruitment of more members and creation of more branches post-lockdown. It's about planning, developing and delivering high quality, highly motivated strategic campaigns that influence government at all levels. And of course, others who can affect the lives of older people to make the changes that we need. Next slide, please. So our challenge today as Active Wales is to all organisations that support older people, to businesses that directly or indirectly supply older people, and to older people themselves to join with us to plan and deliver what could be the biggest, the strongest and the most successful campaign launched to change the perception of retired and older people in Wales and across the UK. Jointly, we have the skills, the knowledge to plan and execute a campaign that could be the catalyst that gives ageism the same profile as other inequalities. The first step in changing the historic and outdated narrative that defines ageing today. Behind us, we have a large and increasing demographic that if we can motivate them, we could force the hands of those that hold power in society, both financially and at a societal level, to make this paradigm shift and change the lives of older people. We challenge you, other organisations in Wales, to join with us and let's plan a campaign to start the change of the narrative surrounding older people in Wales. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Anne. Despite the technical hiccups, you did very well with that. Thank you again. We've now come on to lunch period. Now we're running, just checking on the time, we're running 15 minutes later than planned. Rather than reduce the lunch period, we'll start back 15 minutes later than the schedule. The schedule for reopening is 20 to 1. So it's going to be 5 to 1 when we reopen for the afternoon session. So just to mention, during the period where we're closed for lunch, there'll be videos running. I mentioned, I think, Fools and Horses and some music and various things. So enjoy your lunch, everyone, and look forward to seeing you about 5 to 1. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. The first presentation we have is from Rupinder Singh from Cradle Limited. I think is a video presentation, so I'm going to ask the host to put that on for us. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Rupinder Singh. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer and co-founder at Cradle. I'm really pleased to be presenting at your conference today. So thank you very much in advance for sparing the time to listen and hear about our Connect solution. So I'm just going to share some slides and talk you through Connect. So our company is called Cradle and we have developed Connect. So Connect is a simple TV-based video calling system, which also acts as a wellbeing platform to support people in their own homes for areas such as loneliness and isolation, domiciliary care, healthcare, and other settings such as care homes and retirement villages. As is the case with most innovations, There tends to be a personal journey resulting in the development of a product. This is also the case with Connect, which was inspired by our founder, Paul Moorhead, whose late mother was living with dementia, and Paul wanted to find a way to ensure she was okay and safe. So developed Connect as a way to keep closer to his mum. Our mission at Cradle is to address loneliness and isolation. We recognised early on that almost all the products and solutions available for this tend to revolve around using smartphones and iPads. These have small screens, they require to be charged, and often prove difficult to use, especially for older adults. For Connect, we worked closely with people aged between 60 and 90 to both design and develop the system, to ensure it is easy to use and genuinely doesn't require any training. The Connect system is being used today by older adults at home, promoting social connectivity, supporting healthcare, home care, and providing peace of mind for loved ones. Our Connect Hub is easy to install and doesn't require any technical skills. In less than 5 minutes, it can be installed and ready to use. The TV can be any regular TV and doesn't need to be a smart TV. The camera in Connect allows incoming and outgoing video calls, also allowing multi-person calling and TV to TV calling. The Connect Hub links to Wi-Fi, but if there is no Wi-Fi available, it does also have a 4G option. In front of the camera, we have introduced an automatic privacy shutter, which ensures the camera is only ever visible and active when the user chooses to either make or take a video call. The TV interface is simple and driven by yes/no questions, so there is no complexity. The Connect remote has large, easy to press buttons. It also mirrors the on-screen experience with the yes and no options and contains a favourites button, which can act as a single push fast dial to any chosen person, for example, a family member or even a care provider. Connect also provides automatic TV takeover, so the user doesn't need to worry about things such as HDMI switching. The system does this automatically for you and returns you back to the TV channel you were watching previously. In terms of the different users of Connect, firstly, we have the person at home who has the Connect hub on top of their TV to both make and receive video calls, watch videos, and access photos and messages which have been sent to their TV from their supporters. It's important to emphasise that only the person at home needs a Connect hub on their TV. Supporters such as family members, friends and care providers simply download the Connect app to their mobile devices, or alternatively can call from their PC or their laptop. The types of care providers which use Connect include domiciliary care companies, councils, NHS trusts and care homes. Supporters can use the system to keep in touch with the user, set reminders such as medication prompts, share content such as exercise or educational videos, alongside using the Connect dashboard to better support care delivery. For care providers, there are also a range of optional devices which can be used to collect and monitor healthcare readings, such as blood pressure, temperature, reducing the need for the user to travel to healthcare appointments. All of these devices are easy to use and do not require the user to connect to anything or enter any readings manually, as the system automatically picks up the healthcare readings and transmits these securely to the Connect dashboard for the care worker to review. 4 main use cases for Connect are loneliness and isolation, healthcare, home care, and centralised support, such as care homes and housing schemes. Various features of the system relate to these different use cases. For example, loneliness and isolation might rely more on video calling, photos and video sharing, TV to TV calling, and even multi-person group calling. Whereas home healthcare and home care providers might rely more on the Connect dashboard alongside the various healthcare devices and integrated movement sensor. There are also some exciting new features being released shortly, such as voice command and control. The system is also designed to be fully interoperable with NHS trusts, which is an important requirement for healthcare providers who are using the system to support patients in their own homes for a range of different pathways, including long-term conditions. Our vision is that when people are at home, the best way to speak with loved ones and care providers is through the largest, brightest and most familiar screen in any home, the TV. Also, when health deteriorates, that the wider features of the Connect system, such as healthcare devices and reminders, can help ensure the person is cared for at home, rather than necessarily having to travel to hospital. Connect can also be used to bring community events into people's homes, such as exercise clubs, book clubs and coffee clubs, mainly through its multi-person calling feature. If you're a home care service, healthcare service, or an individual who would like to know more, please do get in touch. I believe this slide deck and my contact details will be made available. Thank you very much for listening.
I'd like to thank Rupinder for that presentation he sent in. We have had some communications with him, and I think Anne may mention that later in when she summarises the work in the Secretary's report. Just I'd like to move on now and introduce Joselle Lovell, who's the Financial Inclusion Project Manager at the Wales Cooperative Centre. At the age of 21, Joselle ran a successful public house, restaurant and outdoor bar business for 7 years in Pembrokeshire. Before relocating back to Cardiff, Joselle spent 7 years working in the private sector, then moved to the third sector in 2006. She has worked extensively across Wales, developing and delivering programmes to address key social issues, including lack of education attainment, housing and homelessness, employability skills, financial and digital inclusion. In 2013, Joselle joined the Wales Cooperative Centre, and now as Director of Inclusion Communities she leads the Digital Communities Wales, Digital Confidence, Health and Wellbeing and Communities Creating Homes programmes. Joselle is passionate about cooperative values and believes that together people can create better, fairer, more cooperative Wales through social enterprise, employment ownership, creating community-led housing and digital and financial inclusion. Over to you, Joselle. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me along to speak today. So I'm just going to share my screen and hopefully I will do this. Just checking, can you all see my screen? Can you see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Fantastic, that's great. Let's just get it onto the right slide. Okay.
That's good.
Oh, hang on, let's get back to the beginning of it. Sorry, wrong one. I'll get started now in a minute. I do apologise. There we go. Brilliant. Okay, so thank you for inviting me along today. And what's been a really, really interesting conference so far with some great and interesting speakers. Okay, so I've been with the Wales Cooperative Centre for over 8 years now, and currently I oversee the Digital Communities Wales programme, which is of relevance to Active Wales and your members. So the programme is a Welsh Government funded programme to support digital inclusion across Wales. It's a 3-year programme that finishes in June 2022, but there's a potential 3-year extension for it. And our real focus is on giving people confidence, skills and motivation when to engage with technology and to be able to kind of use it to the best of its benefit for them. We want to take people on a journey to make sure that nobody gets left behind, and because they don't have that confidence or the skills to use digital technology at all. So we know there's certain people in our communities that are more likely to be digitally excluded. And quite often that's people who are older age, people on low incomes, people with low educational attainment, quite often add up to people having social disadvantage, health inequalities. As has already been mentioned this morning by the First Minister's speech, the pandemic has really affected a lot of people, and it's further exposed the digital divides across Wales and the inequalities. And what we've seen from it is lots of people were left behind when all of the essential services, shops and support networks had to move their services online overnight. If people weren't able to engage with digital, it meant they struggled to engage with services and connect to family and friends. So the priority groups that we work with through the programme are older people, and I'd just like to say, by some Welsh Government definitions, I class myself in that as being 51, so I think I'm kind of included in that category. Health and social care workers, disabled people, people living in the social housing sector, people from ethnic minority communities, and economically inactive people. So that's the main focus priority groups of the programme. And the real focus of the programme is to work with people to make sure that they have the basic digital skills and confidence to engage with everyday services and in their working lives. We want to increase people's level of use of technology to help manage their own health, mental and physical, and well-being independently. And we also want to increase digital inclusion being recognised and embedded within organisational strategies and in their delivery. And the real kind of overarching outcome of the programme is that every citizen in Wales should have the basic skills, motivation and confidence and access to engage digitally, but with a caveat if they choose, because we recognise that people have the right to engage with services in a way that's appropriate to them, and that might fluctuate. Sometimes they may want to use digital technology, other times they won't. So it's important that we recognise that there will always be some people that will not want to use technology. So the programme delivers training. We can support setting up volunteering networks in terms of digital networks. We support organisations with consultation to embed those digital strategies. We also run the Digital Inclusion Alliance Wales, which is an alliance of over 70 members made up of public, private, third sector organisations that have come together with the aim of trying to eradicate digital inclusion across Wales where possible. The team work across the whole of Wales and we deliver our training, and our training is also written in first language Welsh. We don't just take the English and translate it, we focus on writing it in the way the learner would want it done. So how do we work? We deliver tailored online and face-to-face group training sessions. Again, I've put in there a caveat, when the programme started, all of our training was face-to-face. With COVID, that had to move online. We've recognised now that people want a mixture. They would like to still do some face-to-face, but obviously we have to work within the government guidelines and the COVID rules at any point in time. We help organisations and groups to set up digital volunteering programmes. We complete digital skills surveys for volunteers and for staff to understand where we can best support them with our training to improve their skills. We work with partners so we can signpost to a lot of online self-learning sessions. So for some people that are more confident in using digital technology, there's a lot of sessions to improve their skills that they can do in their own time rather than in group sessions. We also run training programs to upskill people to be digital champions or digital companions. And that's a great way of supporting people. So if you're fairly familiar with technology and more confident using it, how you can then go on and support people within your community, friends or family. And I think one of the biggest things we do is try and help people to overcome the barriers to using technology. And just listening to some of the conversations today, some of the speakers, and looking at the programme, it really struck me that, you know, technology isn't for everyone, and there's lots of reasons why there's barriers to people using it. And I think sometimes it comes down to confidence and nervousness, not knowing what to do. So the team are there to really support people, to engage them with those different technologies. And I think the most important thing is finding the hook, something that somebody likes, and showing them actually how technology can really help them in terms of, you know, whatever that like is. Moving on. So in a nutshell, that's what the programme does. Like I said, we're there to offer training and support to really help people overcome the barriers to using technology, recognising that, you know, for some people it's just never going to happen, but with the majority of people we really want to be able to kind of show them the benefits that you can have when you do go online or you use different technologies, and how that can actually enhance people's experiences, you know, stop them being socially isolated. So the team are, like I said, across the whole of Wales, and what we'd really like to ask of people attending the conference today and your wider membership is if there's anything that you feel that we can do as a programme to support you and your networks. We would love to work with you more. So please just, I'll put my details again into the chat, but please just get in touch with me directly, and then I can link you up to the local team member. But we would really like to do some more work with you as a membership organisation, to reach out to your members, to really kind of encourage them and help them with the benefits of technology. Thank you very much for inviting me along today. Thank you.
Thank you, Giselle. That was very informative. I'm sure we'll be in touch at some stage, and no doubt others will be as well. Very important area that we need to move forward on. Just thank you again. Right, I'd like to move on now to our AGM scheduled. I'm not going to follow the exact process of elections and motions and this sort of thing. I'm going to ask the Secretary, when she finalises her report, if she can pick up some of the technical details. I'd like just to move on into my report. And it goes as follows. Like many organisations, Active Wales had to adapt to new ways of working throughout the pandemic lockdown restrictions. The executive met on Zoom to begin with, and we discussed and employed ways we could engage with our members and them with us. Various tried and tested methods had been used previously, such as communicating by telephone, letters, news sheets, but we're still not getting through to all members. But you'll hear more about this in Anne Vincent's report. During the lockdown period, on behalf of Active Wales, my work focused on working with other national organisations together with the Old People's Commissioner, Helena Herklots, on a variety of issues affecting older people. Initially, the problems in care homes, lack of PPE equipment, we looked at, and we forwarded then some of our observations and recommendations were forwarded through Helena as she had regular meetings with members of Welsh Government, and we feel that that was a useful tool, if you like, to get the man in the streets view, if you like, and woman in the streets view, to get their views into government for them to consider when they were dealing with these complex issues. I think we made a difference in these areas. In fact, I'm pretty sure we did. Current work I'm involved in is that of abuse of elderly people and all that its complexities. It's still ongoing, and there are many issues to be considered. Another area that we were looking to improve, and in fact, the First Minister mentioned it, and Julie Morgan, is about the primary care and access to face-to-face consultations with our doctors and other health professionals. Social care, obviously, is very much on the agenda, as again mentioned by First Minister and Julie Morgan. And we must, from our point of view, I think we must fight for more joined up thinking between health services and social services and improve them for all our people. It's good to hear Mark Drakeford mention the money that was coming over from the UK government, and let's hope this can be put to good use to improve those things. Other issues that we'll be taking forward in the coming weeks and months will come from our motions that are coming to you soon. The method of voting on those motions we can deal with by email and whatever other methods we can come up with, and that will be dealt with by our Secretary Anne this afternoon. Before I sort of leave off, I'd just like to reinstate our objectives, which can be summarised as: 1, to promote social inclusion and end loneliness and isolation; 2, to provide a voice for retired and older people across our nation; and 3, to campaign to improve the lives and well-being of retired and older people. And I hope we can add another one there, 4, and that's to work in partnership with other organisations where we can. And just to finalise now, I'd just like to thank our executive members and officers for the hard work that they've put in during this last 18 months. It's not been easy at times, and I take my hat off to the commitment and dedication of that, but not forgetting Baroness Gale, who has always supported the organisation, and she's had direct access, obviously, in the House of Lords, and questions have been asked on behalf of older people, which have benefited us enormously. And just like to round off now, but put the Treasurer on the spot, I'd like to introduce John Vincent. And John, who's been our Treasurer and handles all little money we have, handles it very well, I could say. John was brought up in a village near Langyneth, I can't say that, I'm sorry, near Maesteg. And when his father worked in the local paper mill, John attended Maesteg Grammar School and then the University of Swansea and Nottingham. He spent 30 years teaching science to A-level, and with addition of special needs, the Duke of Edinburgh Award Scheme and union activities. He was a member of the senior management team at the Comprehensive, and he was also an in-school mentor for the education department at Wolverhampton University. He's a chartered biologist with additional qualifications in chemistry, physics and earth science. And he now lives with his wife Anne in Derry near Bargoed, and he's the treasurer of Darren Valley 55 Club. And outside of those organisations for retired people. He's a volunteer with Credit Union, the school governor and secretary of his local residents association. His interests include dogs, natural history, opera, steam trains and caravanning. John, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Right. This is the first chance I've had to do a finance report since June 2019.
On time.
I could do a blow-by-blow account of the finances as per finance sheet, but I don't think that would be very interesting at all. But I have got a treat in store for branch secretaries. I'm going to send them the full, unedited finance report by post, so they have some bedtime reading to enjoy. I bet they can't wait. As Barry and other people have said, the pandemic has changed things, at least temporarily, and probably for a little while longer. Things include finance. I've been in the position of not having to spend a lot of money on in-person meetings of the executive, travel expenses and room hire, etc. And we obviously haven't had in-person annual conferences since 2019, so I've saved a bit of money there. There's been no point in having a paper newsletter distributed to branches because branches aren't meeting, so there'd be nobody to read them except the branch secretary, which is a bit limited. Going on to income. Our income from affiliation fees I'll deal with first, because this does involve the branches directly. Some branches paid their affiliation fees by March 2020, which, as we all know, is when the lockdown started. So they've paid. There are a few who paid, and I received the check just after the lockdown started. And because I was shielded, I couldn't get out and pay those checks in. So they never got paid in, because by that time we realised we weren't going to be functioning normally as an organisation. So those branches didn't actually pay anything. The checks didn't clear. And there were a few branches who were always late, and they know who they are, who didn't get round to paying anything at all. We've discussed this at the executive, and what we'll do is, for the branches who paid before the lockdown started, we will credit their fees to 2022. So they won't be asked to pay in 2022. All they'll get is a reminder letter saying, you've paid. Everybody else will have to pay the enormous sum of 50 pence per member per year, which is nearly 1 penny a week if they can scrape it together. Right, dealt with that. What have we actually spent money on over the pandemic period? Well, we printed some leaflets and a few newsletters ready for when we do get back to near normal. We've printed an annual report. We've paid for our website maintenance because that's one of the things we're trying to push so that people can actually communicate with us and we can communicate with them over the internet. We've paid our insurance premiums. We didn't really need the insurance, as it turns out, but we might have, and you can't. That's what insurance is, isn't it? It's just in case. We've paid for competition prizes because we started to run competitions. We paid a lot of postage because that's the only way we could communicate with some branches, because they don't do the internet yet. We're working on that. We've had to pay for this online conference, and there have been some travel expenses to pay. Some, not as much as normal, but some. Now, a lot of the running costs of the organisation are, thankfully, as far as I'm concerned, paid from a grant that the Welsh Government gives us, along with other organisations, which we're very thankful for. We're also very thankful for the sponsorship of this annual conference, again, even though it's in a different form, by Community Pharmacy Wales. So thank you again, and I hope you can do it again next year. So overall, when you work it out, the Active Wales finances, even though there's been lots of changes and disruption to the whole organisation, the finances are more or less the same as when the pandemic started. So we've got some money in reserve, so we will be able to help branches to recover in with whatever help they need, and to recruit new members, we hope, and hopefully set up some new branches. There'll be money to do that. Now, as I say, the detailed accounts with income and expenditure lists balance sheets will be sent to branch secretaries after the conference. But I think that's it. Chair?
Thank you. Thank you very much, John. And thank you, John, very much. And I know our finances are in good hands, so we go forward. Right, I need to now come to Anne Vincent. I give a rundown on Anne's background. She works extremely hard for Active Wales, and I'm most grateful for all the work she's put into this conference. Over to you, Anne, please, for a secretarial report. If you could finish off on some of the technical stuff, the motions that have been put forward, that would be helpful, together with the fact that officers can be re-elected because there's been no challenges. Thank you.
Okay.
Fine. You okay, Anne?
I'm just wondering if anybody's got me on screen.
I've got you on screen.
You
Fine.
have?
Yes.
Okay. Right then, I'd like to start off by thanking you for joining us today, and a particularly big thank you to Community Pharmacy Wales for their ongoing support, without which conference wouldn't happen. So without further ado, you probably know why we exist, and that is to support and encourage older people to develop their own social groups that they can run autonomously, and to be there as added support if ever they need anything, or they need us to give them any kind of advice, or well, any kind of support they need, really. We have several aims here, as do all organisations, to reduce isolation and loneliness, to empower retired and older people to set the narratives themselves, on who they are, what they do, how they're perceived, to provide retired and older people with a representative voice. And like most organisations, we have done that on an active basis, ongoing, until we were struck with a pandemic. And like most organisations, we've seen a decline in our membership resulting from the pandemic. Now, our demographic has for many years been people in their 70s and 80s, mostly. We have a few 90-year-olds who are still actively working in their branches, but mostly 70s and 80s. Some branches meet weekly for a cup of tea and a chat and a game of bingo. Other branches have a more higher profile out there, and they do things like theatre visits, meals out, holidays and weekends away. It's up to the individual branches to do what they want to sort of run their organisations under their members' own remit. But the pandemic has forced our membership into an unsocial place. So our social groups are now unsocial groups, and it's been for what seemed like the longest time. I think without a doubt, the effects of the pandemic were far-reaching for everybody, not only physically, but psychologically as well. The mental health conditions that are not so easily seen or understood and often go undiagnosed for years have hit older people quite badly, quite disproportionately, in fact. Our membership was subjected not only to loneliness and isolation, but they were deprived of companionship of their friends and family, people they'd known virtually all their lives. And it has sort of been exacerbated by the daily bombardment in the media, on TV, wireless and newspapers, etc., which in general has been telling them that they are the most vulnerable people to COVID-19, that COVID-19 is going to kill them and that they're going to die being unable to breathe. how does that affect an individual's morale and their mental well-being? Very badly, I would say. We have had a far overreaching message, I feel, and that is that whilst we can't meet face to face, we can find other innovative ways of meeting and supporting each other. But we have a demographic that tends to feel intimidated by some of the technology that we have on offer today. Age Cymru very kindly supported older people with the offer of free, or rather not free, but long-term loans of tablets, digital tablets. But we've only had about 3 of our members take that up. And I think when Jo spoke earlier on, she mentioned the fact that a lot of older people are somewhat afraid of technology, but that's based on a lack of confidence. And as Jo said, a nervousness. Will they be able to do it? Or in many cases, a feeling that they can't do it because they are just not capable. And of course, we know that's not true. We have people of all ages using digital technology, the difference being that many people have more confidence in themselves to be able to pick it up and run with it. So back to our membership. Is it any wonder that older people were worried about rejoining groups? We are finding some of our groups are starting to rerun. They're getting back online. Risk assessments have been done. They're attending sort of branch meetings under social distancing. But a lot of people are still concerned that the virus is still out there and that they are susceptible to getting that. Again, we are trying to be social in unsocial times. We see many of our branches fold, leaving people in those areas without any form of meeting, without any form of meeting up with long-term or even lifelong companions. Branches that do continue to exist have found their membership depleted, leaving them unsure of the future of the branch. As a result, these conditions, we took a decision to revisit our objectives with a view to relaunching. And today we relaunch the new Active Wales with a deeper and more far-reaching set of objectives to help support older people in Wales. Over the next few years, we'll be launching a programme of events which will support recruitment of new members for our existing branches. We're also looking to extend our footprint into West Wales and North Wales. These events will be held in appropriate venues, will include presentations from Active Wales and others on the support that can be offered to individuals to create social groups in their areas. And we will also have other branches there who can advise on what value a branch can add to the lives of older people. And other organisations who we're planning to work with, who also can add value to the lives of older people. To do all of what we're hoping to do in this event, we realise that we need to work together. We need to share knowledge and information that can benefit older people with other groups and then with us. We're thrilled to say that we're already working with Age Cymru, the Older People's Commissioner in Wales, and now moving forward with 2 new partners. The charity Reengage, who you've heard from today, and of course Digital Community Wales, who you've also heard from. We're hoping that more organisations will join us in supporting people and work with us in partnership going forward. In the process of relaunching, we identified the roles that social media plays in communicating with society. Whilst we have a website, a Twitter page and a Facebook page, we knew we weren't using them to their full advantage. So we decided we'd need to step out there and engage with a volunteer because we don't have the funding to employ, but to go with a volunteer who might help us with social media. And we're pleased to say that we were approached by and we agreed to co-opt Fabrizio Caruso, a recent digital media graduate who's developing a social media strategy for us. And this will encompass Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Fab, like all of us, is a volunteer giving his time and his expertise free of charge to help older people in Wales. And we're looking, as I say, to co-opt him as our social media officer. We also felt our website required an update. So again, we reached out for a volunteer who could listen to our vision for what we'd like our website to look like and transform that into reality. We were approached by a lovely young lady, Leah Chowdhury, who listened to everything we said and has designed a beautiful new website that's inspiring and user-friendly. We're now looking for somebody who can build that site for us. We're also looking to increase our campaign activity going forward. As you heard, we're asking other organisations that touch the lives of retired and older people to join with us to campaign for a change in the way older people are perceived today. Between us, as I've said, we have the skills and the ability to do this. What's more, we have the membership to support it. Are you up for the challenge, other organisations? We hope so. We also recognise the need to plan and coordinate our campaigning, which is based upon our members' motions submitted to conference today. With that in mind, we're introducing a new mini conference in January. This will be for the branch executive members of Active Wales. This will be held centrally in Cardiff and will bring together the voices of all our membership so we can make joint decisions on the way we take each campaign chosen from today's meeting forward. We're also exploring how we can help tackle digital inclusion, or rather digital exclusion. Working together with Digital Communities Wales and our membership, we've identified training which is free of charge, mindful of the fact that many older people have little confidence in their own abilities. We have managed to find this training that is absolutely great. It's 6 hours worth. It's 2 hours a week on a Monday morning in the members' local library. And we are assured that it will be delivered in a user-friendly way with a cup of tea and a chat. What more can you ask for? To support our ambitious plans this year, we've also approached local authorities and voluntary organisations that support older people. We've also reached out to the older people's champions in local authorities. We believe that it's only by co-production that we can achieve our objectives and to begin to change the way older people are perceived. This obviously is pivotal in allowing older people to re-engage with society, safe in the knowledge that they are valued, respected, and acknowledged for the part they have played and continue to play within society. It is only when this happens that true equality will begin to surface. As part of our annual general meeting, we have put out a call to our membership to nominate individuals for the post of chair, vice chair, general secretary and treasurer. Nominations for these are Barry Stevens as chair, Anna Ivy, vice chair, general secretary Anne Vincent and treasurer John Vincent. As Barry said earlier on, these motions are uncontested, so the said individuals are elected unopposed. For the motions to conference, normally when conference is face-to-face, we would take a vote. This year, obviously, we can't do that, so we will be sending out the motions to membership with a voting slip by email and by post, and we will announce which of the motions that I will put forward today will be taken forward over the next 12 months. There are 9 motions to conference. First one is that GPs seem reluctant to do house calls. Some people fear this will continue after lockdown. The majority of older people are not able, nor do they want consultations online. What can we do to ensure this practice does not continue? That's submitted by Cumdare. Cumdare's second motion is to lobby the governments to reverse the BBC decision to charge elderly for TV licenses. Motion 3 from Cumgross, that all villages receive an adequate bus service. Conference motion 4, also from Cumgross, that taxi services by community car should be free to those with bus passes. Motion 5 from the Darren Valley, changing the narrative that surrounds retired and older people. We need to change the narrative around older people in the language they use to define us, our ability to be independent and to make decisions for ourselves. We want to be treated with dignity, respect by everyone in society. Motion 6, Darren Valley, making train travel accessible for all, providing accessibility for older people and others in society by reducing the gap between the train floor and the platform edge. Buses and taxis and continental trains do it, so should the rail service in Wales. Motion 7, Darren Valley, the moving forward in a cashless society and the increased use of technology with apps and cards for everyday transactions makes it difficult for elderly people. I know that COVID has caused a lot of disruption with staff shortages and people working from home, but it is difficult to get through to a real person on the telephone with answering messages, frequently suggesting you go online. Motion 8, Darren Valley. It is increasingly difficult for elder people to see a doctor face to face. Again, technology is increasingly being used to diagnose health problems, sometimes incorrectly, and as in the case of cancers, delays can be fatal. Final motion 9, Darren Valley. On Bargoed and other Valleys train sections, you now have to use a card in a machine to obtain a ticket, as there's no ticket office and no guard on the train. You used to be able to pay cash to the guard, but now you have to queue at Cardiff to buy a ticket with money. That concludes the list of motions today. As I said, we'll be sending them out to the branches and we will be advising of the ones that we will be taking forward. So finally, a word of thanks to everybody who has helped us to move forward today. And I'd like to particularly extend my thanks to Baroness Anita Gale for all the help she's given me. I am new to the position of General Secretary, but I think, as most of you know, Anita is a very, very experienced General Secretary at the highest level of politics in Wales. So thank you, Anita. I wouldn't have got where I am without you. And that's all, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Anne, can you cover the Active Wales Lottery, please, just briefly? Could you just have a mention there?
Yes, I will do. A little while ago, we started talking about fundraising for Active Wales. This came about because we were interacting with Cradle Connect, who you heard Rupinder speak earlier on. And I was so impressed with that technology because even though I don't have great issues with my eyesight, I struggle to see what's on my phone when I'm using it. And I thought, for somebody to be able to use a television screen and a remote control that just has 3 buttons on would be absolutely superb for older people who lack mobility to be able to communicate with friends and loved ones. So I discussed with Rupinder, what if our members wanted this but were struggling with finances? And we negotiated a discount that Active Wales members who wish to buy one of these machines could get. And as part of that whole discussion, we said that we would trial the Cradle Connect, and Rupinder agreed to us having 4 or 5 people who could have one of these, well, I want to call it machines, but that's not very digitally correct, is it? This technology in their own homes and trial it for, say, 4 weeks, free of charge, and we could see what value that added to their lives. Unfortunately, we couldn't get any volunteers because I think that a lot of the older people were concerned about people, or, you know, strangers coming in their house during COVID times. And also, of course, again, they're not very confident with technology. So that hasn't happened yet. I'm still hoping that, you know, we'll be able to find 4 or 5 people who would be willing to trial it for a month. But where that relates to the lottery is that we realise that a lot of older people haven't got the additional cash to spare to do this. And whilst this technology is on a subscription basis, you pay for it much as you do a mobile phone contract, we recognise that any kind of added money issues for older people isn't always feasible. So we wanted to look at how we could raise money to support older people if they wanted to go ahead and do that. And having a lottery of our own was one of the suggestions we came up with. And Prize Provision is basically a company that is licensed to run lotteries. And I believe, and I may have got this the wrong way around, but I believe they actually run either the postcode lottery or the health lottery that you see advertised on TV. They also run a lottery for Unite the Union, and they do some political organisations who have lottery pages, as well as many other smaller charities and organisations like ourselves. And we were hoping to get the marketing manager here today to be able to explain how it works. He wasn't able to get here for what reason, I don't know. But what we were trying to do, or what he would have told you today, is that the way this works is that they take over the running of a lottery like the postcode lottery or the health lottery. You can pay for it by direct debit or bank transfer on a monthly basis. Whatever your membership buy in terms of tickets, which are £1 a ticket every week, you get 50% of it, they get 50% of it. Their 50% of it goes towards the prizes and the administration costs and the tax that's imposed by the Gaming's Lottery organisation. 50% of that money then becomes your funding, what you've received from it. They're all sort of licensed by the government to run this. They're very sort of very controlled and overseen by all of the authorities that do so, the financial services, etc., the Gaming Lotteries Board. But it's whether or not our members would buy the tickets. The prizes are very much like, again, the health lottery, postcode lottery, whereby you've got £25,000 is your main prize, and then they go down in relation to how many balls in the lottery you actually have. So we're in that position whereby we don't know whether our members would be willing to support buying lottery tickets. And the way that this works is not only your members, but your members persuade their friends, their families to buy tickets as well. And it has like that snowball effect. So that's a little bit about how a national lottery would, not a national lottery, how an Active Wales lottery would work. I don't know whether we go ahead with it, but it's one stream of funding that we are trying to investigate. Thank you, Barry.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you very much, Anne. Have a glass of water now. Thank you very much. All right, if we can move on to Damien. Is Damien Reynolds there, please?
No, he's not, Barry. He was the one that was going to present on the lottery. But
that's fine. Okay, thanks for that. We can move on to Welsh Water, and I've got a name here of Ailes O'Leary.
Yeah, it's Alex. Hi, everyone.
It's Alex, sorry.
Yeah, it's ALIX, so it's a bit...
Right, okay, I think there's a spell error there, that's fine. Oh, if you could introduce yourself, and what I did see on my notes was you could save us money, so you've got my whole attention.
Yeah. Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Alex O'Leary. I work for Welsh Water. I work in the community and I work as part of the vulnerable customer team. So my role is I work with third parties, so places like the food banks, citizens advice and so on, and help their staff to support customers who might be in vulnerable circumstances, as well as working with customers and come into community groups and things like that to meet people as well. So we've got a number of different tariffs available. There's a lot of information on our website and I have some slides. So what I'll do is send these over to Anne and my contact details. So if you wanted to ask me any questions and you give consent, just give your name and number to Anne and I will arrange a call back for you. But because I've only got 10 minutes, what I'll do quickly is just kind of give a really brief overview of what we have available. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is our Priority Services Register. This is more practical support rather than financial support. And it's basically to safeguard you. So if anyone in your household might need some extra support, that could be due to age. So anyone over the age of 65 or anyone with children under the age of 5, anyone with a health or medical condition. If you sign up to Priority Services, it's completely free. And if there's ever an emergency in your area, which meant there was no water, so something unplanned, say a burst pipe or something like that, and you had no access to water, if you're registered with Priority Services, we will deliver you free bottled water within 4 hours. We also offer other support like adapted communication. So if you've got a visual impairment, we offer large print, braille, or we can read your bill over the phone. We can set up a nominee on the account or set up a password scheme. So there's loads of different things on Priority Services which just provide some free extra support or adapt the way we communicate with you. And then on to the financial savings. So the best part, we have social tariffs available to help save you money. So one of those schemes is a meter, which some of you might be on already. After 2000, all homes were built with a meter installed, but before that, homes were on a rateable value, so it was like a fixed charge. And the average charge is £650 a year. So although you can use as much water as you need, you will always pay that amount. So if you live alone or with one other person, you're in a small household, going on to a meter might really benefit you because the average bill for one person is around £280 to £300 a year. So it's a lot different than that 650. We also have an app, which I will also send to Anne, the poster as well, so you can see. So if you are on a meter, you can enter your details onto the website and receive some free water efficiency products to your door. We will deliver them. We also have, sorry, I've had a cold. We also have 2 other tariffs available. One is called Help You. This is for low-income households. So to qualify, someone in the household must be in receipt of a means-tested benefit and then fall into the brackets that we have for low income. So again, if your household is in receipt of a means-tested benefit, you know, if you're happy to just pass your details on, I can give you a call and see if you qualify for that one. And that will bring your bill to £250 for the year. So you can use as much water as you need, but it's £250. We also have Watersure Wales. This tariff is £360 for the year, so about £30 a month. And this helps people either with a large family, with 3 or more children under the age of 19 who all live at home, or it also helps people who have a medical condition, which means they use more water. So the condition could be anything from OCD to arthritis to eczema. We haven't got a list, it's just, it could be anything. If you feel maybe you take longer in the shower, or you need to wash clothes more often, bed sheets, things like that, then you can apply for that tariff. And as I said, that was £360 for the year. We also have debt schemes available if you have any arrears or debts in your account. One of them, you can pay through your benefits if you're in receipt of them. So you pay towards your ongoing and your arrears at the same time. Or we also offer a debt scheme where if you are in severe financial hardship and all you can pay is your ongoing charge. So say, for example, £30 a month. If you make those payments for a year, we will write off all of the arrears off your account just by making those ongoing charges for a full year. So there's a number of different support available. So there's the tariffs I talked to you about, which are meters, Help You and Watershore Wales, and our debt schemes as well. And also our Priority Services Register, which I mentioned at the start, which really just safeguards you if there's ever an emergency in your area. So what I will do, because I know there's a lot of information to take in, and it's kind of, you know, if you wanted to look at the detail, I will send these slides, and you can also look on the website because it will break down all the information there and the eligibility as well. But if you feel you fall into any of the brackets, such as low income, health needs, or maybe you live alone and would like a meter, please pass your details, just your phone number and your name, to Anne. And if she's happy to, she can pass them back to me, and I can call you the beginning of next week then, if that's convenient, and help you with that over the phone. And because you would have come through this way, this is how I met you, I will not ask you for any proof of income or medical conditions. I will just process that over the phone for you to save you having to send anything in. So I haven't got very long, but if anyone's got any questions now they'd like to ask, you know, please feel free if there's anything you'd like me to answer at all.
Alex, what I've asked the members to do is to write in, and we'll pass those over to you. Is that okay?
Amazing. Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Okay.
I know that was really quick. Is that okay? Do you want me to drop off now and I'll send all the information over, is it?
I think if Anne has the information, she can disseminate it. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for everything.
Thank you for your time, and that was very informative. Thank you again.
Right.
I'd like to move. Thank you. I'd like to move now to Tim Crahart, who works for Home Share, and if you could introduce yourself, Tim, and explain what you do, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, no
Thank
problem. Thank you, Barry. Yeah, so my name's Tim Crahart. I'm the Home Share Wales Development Officer, and it's a real delight to come in and speak to you here today about Home Share and the fact that we are coming into Wales. So I'm going to share my presentation with you, if that's okay. So can you all see my presentation there? That's there. So yes, so Home Share has been around as a concept for quite a few years in the UK from about the 1980s, and we're just bringing it into Wales now. So we've been very fortunate that Welsh Government has given us 3 years funding to bring 3 pilots into Wales. So we haven't got any programmes up and running yet, but we're talking to organisations that could potentially be Home Share providers. So it's a very exciting time for us, and it's also Home Share Week as well. So if you go on our Twitter or on our Facebook pages or website, you'll see information about that. But I'm going to talk a little bit through today about the why do we have Home Share? What exactly is it? How does it work? And we've also got some surveys out, so I'm going to talk about that. So we've heard a lot already. We've heard this morning from the First Minister and also from Julie Morgan about the state of social care at the moment. So we know that there are big issues around that, particularly affecting older people, but not just. We also know that there's a massive housing demand. In 2018, there were around about 66,000 households in Wales on the waiting list. There's a demand there. We also know that house prices are rising. And you might have seen about a month ago, there was a news article saying that house prices in Wales have gone up 20% in the last year. And previous year, they've gone up around 12%. So it's getting very difficult, if not impossible, for younger people to get their foot on the housing ladder. So there's a need for accommodation. We're also well aware of isolation and loneliness. not only for older people, but also for under 25s have very high rates of loneliness and isolation. So both older people and younger people feeling isolated. And we've also seen that, unfortunately, Wales has very high rates of in-work poverty. So people that are working, but just aren't able to afford the things that they need. And we have the highest rates outside of London for in-work poverty, which is quite a sad stat for us. But the good news is that home share exists. So what exactly is it? So home share is where two unrelated people share their lives for mutual benefit. So they both have something to give and they both have something to receive. So the model is that you have a householder, which is generally an older person living on their own with a spare room, and they need a little bit of companionship, a bit of friendship, and maybe a little bit of support as well. And alongside that, you've got the home sharer, who is generally a younger person, and they need that affordable accommodation, and they're also happy to provide that support that the householder needs. So they would come and live together, and they will both benefit from that relationship, one receiving the accommodation and the other receiving the companionship and the support. So it's a lovely intergenerational model, which goes against all the stuff we've heard about the media, putting the barriers between older and younger people, creating this tension. So it's a lovely model that brings younger and older people together to meet both of their needs. So I'm going to, hopefully this will play. I've got a video which describes it much better than I ever could, from two home sharers. If the video doesn't work, I will send the presentation around.
I'm 95 years old, partially sighted, and I have a housemate who is 27 years old.
Hi, I'm Alexandra, I'm 27, I'm a student living in London. I moved here in September and didn't know anybody in London really.
I wanted to do it because I was very lonely and because I think we all need companionship. In a way, it was quite frightening because you don't know, are you going to fall? Is something going to happen to you? Also, you're bored to tears. You are used to leading an active life, and suddenly there is nothing. My husband had died, I'm a widow, my children had married and gone away, so it's very important to have somebody coming into the house, somebody to talk to, and instead of sitting here looking at four walls and thinking, what am I going to do now?
I mean, on a completely practical level, it's been important for me as a way I can come to London and do my studies. But on the other things that I've got out of it that I wasn't necessarily expecting is, you know, I have a new friend, somewhere that I can feel safe and not isolated in a really big city.
I would just call you a friend. If anybody asked
Good
me,
friend.
yeah, I wouldn't say, oh, well, I'm her home sharer.
You cannot believe the difference that it makes. Just hearing somebody in the house, and to me now, to hear the key in the lock round about 6 o'clock at night is wonderful.
So that was Florence.
Florence.
Oh, that's Florence again. There we are. So that's Florence and Alexandra talking about their home share arrangement. So what exactly, how does it work then? So basically a home share provider, so the organisation that runs the programme would broker that relationship. They would find the householder and the home sharer and bring them together. They would agree amount of support that they need and are happy to give. No personal care is involved in it. That's totally separate from this. They will arrange that good match, find people that are going to get on well together and enjoy each other's company, and that is real priority. Get them together. Once that arrangement's in place, the home sharers, the younger people, don't pay rent, but they do contribute to the household costs. So they do contribute to the bills, and both parties pay a fee to the home share provider. So all parties are also vetted and assessed for their suitability to be a part of the programme. So there is a process to it, and that process is that if you wanted to be part of a programme, part of a home share match, you would find out who is your local provider. They would have an application process. Particularly the home sharer would be interviewed, and also then different checks will be taken out. Then you get to meet each other. Do you get on? Do you find each other's company is good? And then if they like each other, then they sit down and pull that agreement together, agree in the amount of time of support, which is usually about 10 hours a week of support provided. There'll be a trial period and ongoing support. As you can imagine, safeguarding is a massive issue. It's a really something that we take very, very seriously. So we have good practice guidelines for all home share providers. DBS checks are taken out, reference checks are taken. The family of the home share, the householder would want to meet the home sharer. So there's a lot of work that goes into to support that arrangement. We've currently got surveys out at the moment, which is a big thing I really want to push. And the responses, we've had lots of responses from younger people, from home sharers. And what was really encouraging was that the question, what benefits do you feel you could gain from home sharing? The top answer was affordable accommodation, but the second answer was to maybe make a new friend. So this whole idea that young people don't like older people is a nonsense. From all the surveys we've had up back, that was the second top answer. And 97% of them said that they would want to be part of a home share match. So we do have surveys out at the moment. We want to get your views. Do you think it's a good idea? We want to bring it into Wales. We want to hear from people that what they think about it. So we want to hear from individuals. So anybody here today can take part in those surveys. So one is for individuals, particularly potential householders, and the other one is for organisations, particularly those that work with older people. So I'll put those in the chat, and also if Anne could share this presentation around, that would be fantastic. And as I say, I've got there's my contact details if anybody wants to talk to me, to do the presentation for organisations or meetings. That's great. And as I said, it is Home Share Week, so check out our website, our Facebook page, and our Twitter. So hopefully I haven't gone over time, and thank you very much for listening. Thank you, Barry.
Thank you, Tim. That was really interesting, and I think a brilliant initiative. Anything into generational, any models like that are always good to hear about, and dispels all those myths that we have about older youngsters and this sort of thing. But thank you again for your time, and I'm sure we're going to share that information when it comes through to us. Right, on to my next speaker, which this is Baroness Anita Gale, who currently is our president. And as I said earlier, she's extremely supportive of the organisation and many other things. I can mention a little bit about Baroness Gale. She began her working life at the age of 15 as a sewing machinist in the Rhondda clothing factory. And after marrying and having 2 children, she enrolled as a mature student at Pontypridd Technical College and later University College Cardiff. After graduation, she took up a post of Women's Officer of the Wales Labour Party and later its General Secretary, a post she held until her final appointment as a life peer in 1999. Baroness Gale is a former Commissioner for Wales for the Women's National Commission from 2004 to 2009. In 2005, she was presented with the Val Feld Welsh Woman of the Year Award in recognition for her work for women in Wales. Baroness Gale has an active involvement with charitable organisations, including past president of the Royal British Legion, Treherbert and District Branch, patron of Kidney Wales Foundation, patron of Bees for Development, and patron of Cardiff and District Rhondda Society. She co-chairs the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Parkinson's, and she has lifelong commitment to equality for women and campaigns for more women in political and public life. And on a personal level, I'd just like to thank Baroness Gale for all the work and support that she gives our organisation and many others. You're absolutely a gem. I'm going to move over to let you speak now. Thank you, Nisa.
Well, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for the introduction as well. And could I say good afternoon too, and to thank all those who have been with us since 10 o'clock this morning. And you're still with us, so thank you very much for that. Now, I am the last speaker, and when you're the last speaker, you know that everything you were going to say has already been said by somebody else. So I shall do my best without having to hopefully repeat anything that you've already heard. So could I start off by saying how good it was to see all our speakers today. And I think I'd mention in particular the First Minister Mark Drakeford. You know, he's in effect the Prime Minister of Wales, and he's given up his time this morning to be with us, and I thought that was really great. And to the Deputy Minister, to Julie Morgan, and what they were showing us quite clearly, I thought, is what the Welsh Government is doing for older people in Wales. And they have, I thought, a determination about them that they're going to do all they can to improve the lives of older people. And I was hearing this morning that the life expectancy then for people now in Britain, I think it was not just Wales, was 8 years of age. Well, I'm glad of that because you know, I'm there already, so I'm hoping we'll go on a bit longer. But what I was saying is there's so many older people now. We have to address these issues and make life good for older people in Wales. And obviously the Commissioner for Older People couldn't be with us today, but it was good to see Kelly Davis, who stepped in at such short notice. And we know that the Commissioner is doing really, really marvellous work on our behalf. Now we've, you know, we're just coming out of the pandemic, and COVID has certainly changed all our lives. And we know that there's now a new normal we must deal with. We're never going to go back to the old normal. COVID has changed all our lives. Just as we're having this Zoom conference, would we have ever thought of that 2 years ago? No, none of us had ever heard of it, had we? So we've got to change to this new normal, and we know what an impact with all our lives, with lockdown and other restrictions, we know that's isolated many older people. They've been isolated and excluded, and especially for those who cannot use modern technology. And I know Active Wales, we've been addressing this and trying to give help and support. And it's all there and it's all free. If only we can get them to come and learn it. And once you've done it, you'll be amazed of why you didn't do it before. So I think that's why Active Wales, we are doing our best to get training for those who would like to learn how to do it. And I would urge those who do not use computers to go on these courses and get included in all we do. Now, there is good news, as others have reported, that our new normal life may be returning as many branches are reopening, giving people an opportunity to meet and socialise after a long period of restrictions. And I think you, Chair, and the General Secretary, and I, we're hearing of really good social activities now back on the agenda, and people are mixing and going out and going to their meetings or having dinners or afternoon teas, and I think that is great, you know. So as part of our new normal, the officers and the Executive Committee have looked at new ways of engaging with branch officers, as our General Secretary mentioned earlier. And we have agreed a good way forward would be to have a meeting of branch officers in the new year, where we can get together to discuss motions put to conference, which I must say are all really topical, how we can enact them and how we can engage in ways where we can all work together. So I really hope the branches will take up this offer because without them, obviously, we wouldn't be able to have any sort of meeting at all. So I really hope that we can get the support from the branch officers for that. Now we know that, and again, a lot have been spoken about this today, about older people and how, you know, most people, thank goodness, as we get older, you know, most of us are healthy and we can carry out making a good contribution to the community. Many organisations rely on older people as volunteers, and you just got to look at the charitable organisations and see how many older people work in them in a voluntary capacity. And again, as others have said, so many families rely on grandparents and sometimes great-grandparents who do an enormous amount of work in child caring whilst their parents are out at work, or indeed caring for a partner or other relatives. And in the process, saving the government absolutely billions of pounds in unpaid work. Now, I think it's so good that many of us can lead an active and full life as we get older. And each year, as I said earlier, life expectancy is increasing. So I think it's really, we can enjoy our lives and still know when we're making a great contribution to our families and our communities. And we do have a strong voice in Active Wales, which can provide such an effective means of campaigning for all older people in Wales. So I would say we should use our voice. We've got a very strong voice, and at all levels of influence and at all levels of government. As we know, our Barry, as our chair, he does a lot of work in this field, going to different organisations, making our voice heard there, as Julie Morgan pointed out. So what I would like to do now, Chair, is to thank all the officers and the Executive Committee for the work they've done in the past 18 months. And as we come out of the pandemic, we can see that there can be a future that is good for older people in Wales. I would also like to thank all our speakers and to Community Pharmacy Wales for their continued support of Active Wales. And I'd like to thank again all the officers and the Executive Committee. The hard work has been put into having our conference today. I think it's proved worthwhile. So can I end by thanking you all for giving me the honour of being your president. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Baroness Gale. How do I follow that? Right, what I can say, we're doing okay for time, which is good. What I can say initially, that a big thank you to all the speakers. I think they've made the day. It's good to see how many organisations out there are willing to contribute their time to something like this today and explain the work that they're doing, which is